Welcome to Reddit Stories. I'm Mr. Redder. Let's get right into today's stories. My wife confessed to me that she cheated with my own father while I was away on a work trip. My birthday was a total disaster. I had a small party at my place with a few close friends just trying to enjoy a chill night. The drinks were flowing and the music was good, and for a while, I actually felt happy. But once everyone left, my wife sat me down on the couch looking pale and anxious. This may not be word for word, but it was basically like this. Her: I need to tell you something. Me: can it wait? I'm tired and we were supposed to go out later. Her: no, I can't keep this in anymore. That's when I started to feel uneasy. She looked like she was about to throw up. Me: okay, I said, sitting up. What is it? Her: she hesitated, gripping her hands together like she was holding herself together. I did something horrible, and I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me. Me: what are you talking about? She took a deep breath, then just blurted it out. While you were away on that business trip, I slept with your dad. Everything went silent to me at that point. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. My own breathing got heavier. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. Me: you what? Tears were already streaming down her face. I didn't plan for it to happen, I swear. I don't even know how to explain it. He came over one day to check on me, and we were talking, and one thing led to another, and… Stop! I held up a hand, my heart pounding in my chest. Just shut up! She sniffled. I'm so sorry. I regret it every single day. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Oh, you regret it? That makes it all better, doesn't it? At this point, my vision started to get blurry and my stomach felt twisted. You're lying, I said, shaking my head. This can't be real. Her: it is, she choked out. I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I feel so terrible. I stood up, my whole body trembling with rage. Get out. She looked at me, her face full of desperation. Please, just get out. My voice was so loud, I barely recognized it as my own. Her: I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I still love you. I let out another sharp laugh. Love? You love me? You slept with my dad, and you still have the audacity to say that you love me? She broke down crying, but I didn't care. I turned away from her and went straight to the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. My heart was racing so fast, I thought I was going to pass out. I don't know how long I stayed in there. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, feeling nothing and everything all at once. Eventually, I forced myself to get up and check the front door. She was still in the living room, curled up on the couch, her face buried in her hands. I didn't say a word. I just turned back around and walked away. So yeah, happy birthday to me. Best gift ever. Calling a divorce lawyer tomorrow. I've got a vegan coworker and I don't know how to deal with her. I have this vegan coworker who we'll call Vegan, who's very active on Facebook and in the office about being vegan and how cruel farming is. Each to their own. I don't necessarily disagree with her views on how animals are treated, but here's the thing. I'm a hunter. Not a trophy hunter, but I do hunt feral pigs, rabbits, ducks, classified game ducks, and foxes. I also fish. All except the fish are classified as pests. Foxes especially kill native wildlife and farm animals. Farmers will often let hunters onto their property for free to help control them. I've passed tests for identifying game ducks versus protected species, and I practice ethical hunting. That means fair chase, no dogs or tracking devices, practicing good marksmanship, dispatching prey swiftly and humanely, and not wasting the meat. None of that is good enough for Vegan. When she first joined the team and announced she was vegan, I kept my mouth shut about hunting. I also think she's intolerant because she constantly preaches about how going vegan will cure people's ailments and always turns up her nose at meat being heated in the microwave. Because of this, we've kind of unconsciously started excluding her when we go to lunch. Last year, I started hunting more regularly with a work friend whose uncle owns a farm with a feral pig problem. My friend and I often chat about hunting in the kitchen area, where we sometimes eat lunch together. That's how Vegan found out I was a hunter. Ever since then, every conversation I've had with her has somehow involved hunting and how cruel it is. One time, I wore a leather pencil skirt to work, and she made a comment about me wearing animal products. She seemed to have singled me out because I hunt. My boss has no spine. I've tried talking to him about it, but she just intimidates him, plays the victim, and he backs down. She even tried to get a vegan shelf in the fridge and roped in some vegetarian coworkers. but they pointed out that they use milk, cheese, and honey in their cooking. They also think she's nuts. It's gotten to the point where we go out for drinks on Fridays at 5 and we don't invite her. I don't organize these outings, but my boss told me that she feels left out and blames me for turning the groups against her. I've been careful since then. If anyone starts talking about vegan, I just say I don't talk to her unless it's work-related and that she does her job well. It's actually become a bit of a joke. I told my boss that I don't organize any informal events and that she's always been invited to official ones. If she's not invited to casual hangouts, that's not my problem. The coworker who doesn't invite her has his own reasons. Whenever she brings up hunting, I just ask if there's anything work-related she needs. If not, I start talking to someone else or walk away. I've told her multiple times to keep it work-related. I never start conversations with her, but she always finds me when I'm making tea, getting water, or stretching my legs. Last week, a group of us were talking when she got up to join in. A horrible silence fell over the group. I just excluded myself and I went back to my desk, and so did a few others. It all came to a head in our team meeting today. At the end, my boss asked if anyone had personal good news to share, like engagements or charity events. Vegan sarcastically asked how many lives I'd taken last weekend. I got annoyed and told her that her constant badgering about my hobbies and diet was discriminatory, and that unless it was work-related, she shouldn't talk to me. I told the scribe to put that in the meeting minutes. She looked shocked. My boss looked uncomfortable but said, "Fair enough." I thought that was the end of it, but right before closing the meeting, 2 other coworkers also spoke up. They asked Vegan to keep conversations work-related and said they were uncomfortable getting unsolicited health advice about eating meat. My boss, clearly uncomfortable, asked Vegan to respect their wishes and ended the meeting. Vegan didn't look anyone in the eye and instead went straight to the bathroom. My boss wanted someone to check on her, and I think eventually someone did, but she was in a stall and asked to be left alone. She eventually came out, asked my boss to leave early, and left. Now I feel awful. She embarrassed me in front of the team, so I pushed back, but I don't want her to be miserable. I also don't want anything to do with her. Some coworkers and I ended up in a quick conference call with HR. They said that constant unwanted jabs about eating meat weren't okay, but suggested mediation to smooth things over. HR then called my boss, who explained what happened in our previous complaints. Then he went into a meeting room and I didn't hear the rest. I don't know what to do if she comes in tomorrow. Should I even talk to her? Update 4 days later. The meeting happened on Friday. The HR rep was all about let's all get along and mediation buzzwords. HR spoke to Vegan first. I'm sure she framed it as her being bullied, which I expected. Then the rest of us had our turn. A coworker who survived cancer had gotten more annoyed after the meeting because of Vegan's unsolicited health advice. She took the lead, explaining how Vegan kept pushing unproven medical advice about cancer prevention. HR and my boss started looking uncomfortable. A coworker with celiac disease also complained about her advice. I didn't know this, but Vegan told another coworker that going vegan would make him a better Hindu because it eliminates all animal mistreatment. People started laughing. One coworker joked that Vegan was like a vegan Amway rep, always selling something no one wanted. HR asked why I requested work-only conversations, and I explained that I hunt ethically. It helps with conservation, and she keeps insulting me for it. I also mentioned the leather skirt comment, pointing out that others wear leather shoes and handbags. Even HR was wearing leather. I told them talking to Vegan was stressful and demoralizing because she ignores my boundaries. Then mediation started. Vegan came in and the others left. I told her I respected her passion, but that it was unfair to single me out or harass me. She said hunting was morally wrong and that she didn't believe in exploiting animals. I told her that her iPhone, clothes, and computer were all produced through human exploitation. The quinoa she loves so much has hurt local farmers in Bolivia. She wasn't as morally pure as she thought. She got defensive. HR stepped in with more let's get along talk. I said I just wanted work-only conversations. Vegan reluctantly agreed and we left it at that. Since then, she's kept her distance. The atmosphere at work is better. She still posts online, but at least she's not pushing it on me anymore. I'll take that as a win. Am I the jerk for breaking up with my boyfriend because he lost my dog? Plus final update. I'm 24, female, and my now ex-boyfriend, 24, male, and I were together for almost 4 years. We got along fine for the most part. There were some incidents, like him losing my stuff, but nothing that made me think he was a bad person, until now. I have a dog, Milo, who's 12, and she's been with me her whole life. She's my best friend, my family. She's always been anxious around new people, but over time she warmed up to my boyfriend. She'd greet him, sometimes ask for pets, and even let him join us on our walks. I thought they had an okay relationship. A year and a half ago, Milo got really sick. She had a bad tooth infection that swelled her eyes shut. I don't have a car, so I asked my boyfriend to take us to the vet. The vet cleaned out the infection and gave me antibiotics and instructions to clean the wound. For weeks, I barely saw my boyfriend because I was taking care of Milo. Every time I mentioned her, he got irritated. Looking back, I should have realized that was a red flag, but I brushed it off. Fast forward to now. My mom and I planned a short trip to visit my grandparents. I told my best friend, Alex, who's 23, that he'd be watching Milo. When my boyfriend found out, he got mad, saying I should have asked him first. He suddenly claimed to love Milo and wanted to take care of her. I was skeptical, but I reluctantly agreed. The trip was supposed to last 3 days. On the second day, I called my boyfriend to check in, and he casually mentioned that Milo really likes being outside. That immediately felt off. I pressed him for details, and he admitted he had been leaving her outside alone for hours, only checking on her every so often. I live in an apartment. There is no backyard. My mom and I left immediately and got home around 9 p.m. Milo was gone. I blocked my boyfriend on everything and I started searching. I printed posters, walked around for hours every day, and posted in local Facebook groups. If anyone has more ideas, please let me know. Now my ex and his friends are calling me a jerk, saying I put my dog above our 4-year relationship. I know that's not true, but I don't have anyone neutral to ask. Update. I pressed charges and got a lawyer. I unblocked my ex like some of you suggested, and it was the best decision. He's incriminating himself, and my lawyer thinks we have a strong case. I also might be able to get a restraining order. His friend group apologized and his mom reached out to me. The best news? Milo is coming home today. She has a good chance of making a full recovery, at least physically. I'm getting my locks changed tomorrow. Final update. My ex came by to get his stuff, but he left with nothing. The moment he saw me, he started begging for forgiveness. I told him I'd forgive him if he told me the truth. He looked me straight in the face and said, "If I'm honest, you won't forgive me." My heart broke all over again. When he saw me crying, he told me to get over it because Milo was already old anyway. Then he said if I really wanted her back, I should get back together with him. And when he trusted that I had truly forgiven him, he'd let me see her again. I was exhausted, hopeless, and furious. As much as I wanted her back, I couldn't even look at him, let alone be with him. So he left, not telling me anything about where she was. Hours later, I got a call. A woman had found Milo on the side of the road. She said she seemed to be in pain, but stayed with her until I arrived. When I got there and saw her lying on the ground, looking so different but still alive, I completely broke down. She's staying overnight at the vet. If everything goes well, she'll be home soon. Am I the jerk for telling my husband to figure out how to take care of our son? I, 30 female, and my husband, who's 33, welcomed our first baby this past September. I've been fortunate to be on maternity leave, but that ends next week. My husband had 2 months off and has been working full-time since. He's off on Sundays and Mondays. I've never left my son except to go to a wedding in December, but we were only away for 3 of his wake hours. My in-laws watched over him and everything was fine. I go back to work next week and my son will be attending daycare. My husband is off this entire week and we've just been taking a staycation. I told my husband, though, I want 1 day on my own to get more comfortable from being away from our baby and that I want him to have the day with our baby on his own. He's never been alone with him for more than an hour. He's a good father, though, and will help out when needed, but he has never been there for the full-blown cries and fussiness while having to take care of the house. A few days ago, we went to a friend's house and our son was screaming like crazy. Whenever I held him, he would calm down. Whenever my husband held him, he would just scream and cry even louder. So my husband just passed him along to me. I was getting frustrated because I wanted to relax with friends and he couldn't calm him down for a minute. Then he tells me that his mom will be coming to help out. I asked him to tell her never mind because he should be able to do it on his own. He called me ridiculous and it shouldn't matter, but I think it really does. I can't be bothered at work unless it's absolutely necessary, so I wanted this to be our trial. His mom will also be working on Mondays, so it's not like she will be available to help out then. His mom is taking his side, but of course she will because our son is her only grandson. So, am I the jerk for telling my husband to figure it out and step up? This isn't a slight towards his mother. I adore her. It's really about him being independent with a baby. She helps us and I always appreciate it. When my husband is home, I do separate myself from them by going to a different room, but he does often come to the room for help. I'm not just dropping him off. Not the jerk. He's the father of the baby and should be able to handle him on his own. Is it just the crying that he can't seem to handle? OP. He doesn't seem to understand the types of cries: hungry, tired, uncomfortable. I try not to insert myself physically, so I tell him what he needs. He also doesn't understand the necessity of baby exercises. He plops baby in a bouncer when I've asked him plenty of times to let him be free on the floor mat so he can stretch, do tummy time, and learn to roll. I educated him more than enough times about that. A good father doesn't help, he does. Do you ever say that you as a mother help with a baby? Of course not, because you know that your baby is your responsibility. Guess what? The baby is also his responsibility. He has just as much responsibility to take care of the baby that you two have together. He has just as much responsibility to take care of the baby as you do. He needs to step up. My wife cheated on me with our nanny, and now she's acting like I'm the crazy one for being upset. My wife and I have been married for 4 years now. We have a 2-year-old son who has a nanny that has overall been great, until recently obviously. My wife works from 2 to 3 days a week, and I work from home most of the time, but I go into the office on Wednesday. We have a nanny who's married to another woman. I've had what I thought was a good working relationship with her. We exchange pleasantries in the morning, and we talk every so often throughout the day. I've treated her very well, and actually, my wife has been consistently wanting to let her go to find more affordable childcare, since before they had an affair. It makes the betrayal sting a lot more, because I don't think the nanny ever realized that I was the reason she had a job, not my wife. Well, basically a few weeks ago, I noticed for the first time my wife was being really protective of her phone. We were driving somewhere and needed to update the nanny on when we'd be back. I went for my wife's phone, which usually isn't a big deal, but this time she snatched the phone out of my hands and got very defensive, telling me to use my own phone. It felt extremely odd. I decided to look at the cameras in our house that evening and noticed that the days I'm not home, but my wife is, they both leave the living room for over an hour while my son is sleeping. There's no other cameras except very obvious ones in the living room. At this point, I decided to get into my wife's MacBook, and easily enough, without any investigating, I saw the texts. They were flirting, exchanging photos, and other things, and my wife even said some things that indicate physical cheating has already happened. I confronted my wife, and she took the approach of calling me names and asking me why I hired this nanny if I'm not an ally of how she lives her life. She has taken no responsibility for damaging our relationship. Also from the texts, it's really clear that our nanny's wife doesn't know about this either, and the nanny made comments about wishing they, her and my wife, met before either of them had met their current spouses. Basically, my wife doesn't consider this cheating, and the nanny doesn't know that I know either. My wife also told me it would be petty and mean to tell our nanny's wife, which I do plan to do. I think my marriage is over. I really need advice on what to do. Is there any reason not to tell my nanny's wife? Is it really not cheating in this scenario? Am I wrong for being upset? I would support my wife if she wanted to be with a woman, but I thought that would mean having a discussion first. Your wife is saying whatever she can so she or her affair partner don't get caught. Tell the nanny's wife ASAP. Keep all of the messages as evidence and divorce her. I can't even believe she would try to use the excuse of you not being an ally. Yes, you need to tell her. It's not petty, it's the right thing to do. Keep the evidence. I'm assuming you'd be just as upset if she had cheated on you with a man. Cheating is anything outside of your established relationship, and she can't dictate to you otherwise. She's just trying to make you out to be the bad guy when she's the one that messed up bad. Keep the evidence where she can't access it. Tell the nanny's wife and look into a divorce lawyer. Get all of your ducks in a row. Sorry you had to go through this. Am I the jerk for wanting to move in my parents, but not my husband's, and suggesting putting them in a nursing home? I, 35 female, have owned our home since before marriage, and we have a prenup. In day-to-day life, we refer to it as our home, but my husband, who's 37, has never paid anything towards it and has no legal rights to it. All of our parents are still alive, but my husband and I were both the youngest kids, and our parents are all much older. His mom has some dementia, and his dad has some major mobility issues. They can no longer stay in their home. Due to mother-in-law wandering the street recently, adult social services has been involved. He has 2 siblings. One is an addict and the other's in prison. The other has 4 kids and lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. Neither of his siblings can take them in, so it's us or a nursing home. Both of my parents are older and have recently retired. They live in a major city but can't afford to live there on just retirement. They need to move. My older brother is no longer with us, so it's just me that my parents can rely on. I want them to move in with us. They're both easygoing people, and my husband gets along well with both of them. They also can contribute to the household finances. They wouldn't be a burden on us at all. My husband's parents just live off Social Security and are going into debt because of their medical costs. They would be a major burden on us. We'd have to take care of them and provide for them full time. My husband works much longer hours than I do, so I'd be responsible for them. My in-laws also aren't very appreciative people, and I don't like them. I mentioned that I want to move my parents in with us, and we could use the money we'd save from their financial help to put his parents in a decent home. He was furious. He thinks we should take his parents in, and my parents can just move somewhere cheaper and manage their own retirement funds fine. I don't think this is reasonable at all. I expressed that he doesn't have time to look after his medically needy parents, nor can he afford in-home health care. He said, because I'm his wife, I should look after his parents out of love for him. I think his response is kind of BS, to be honest. I told him under no circumstances will his parents be moving in, and he's welcome to move out and care for them elsewhere. I told him if he decides to stay, I'll respect his decision of not wanting my parents to move in, and I can look into other options for them. Am I the jerk for not being willing to let my in-laws move in, but wanting my own parents to move in? Update. I spoke to my husband for an hour about it. I think he thought I would cave, but I'm not. Our marriage is done, and honestly, I'm okay with it. I bring a lot more to the table, and I'm ready to be with someone who's an equal partner. Certain aspects of his culture I admire, but the relentless idea of sacrificing everything so your parents are comfortable is something I don't agree with. They've always treated me poorly, and I'm not willing to sacrifice for them. My husband packed some clothes and is going to stay on his friend's couch for a while. I'm going to move my parents in later this month, and I'm going to change the locks and move his stuff out to a storage unit tomorrow. He can't afford a lawyer, so I'll find one to represent us both, and that'll be it. I don't know what he'll do about his parents, and I don't care. He doesn't make enough to pay for their care, so they're probably going to the only nursing home in the area that works with Medicare. It's a truly awful place, which does suck for them, but they treated me like dirt, so that's life, I guess. Second edit. A lawyer can't represent us both, apparently, and can only mediate us both. Crappy, but whatever. I'll get myself one, and if he can't come up with the money, I'll get whoever's cheapest. Not the jerk. You'll carry the burden of doing the majority of the work. By the sounds of it, your in-laws need people with proper medical training to properly take care of them. You're not the jerk. His parents need way more help than you can give them. If he cares about them, he would want them in a facility where they can receive professional help. His mom's some dementia is only going to get worse, and she needs to be where she can be cared for and monitored properly. Am I the jerk for saying I don't want to plan my friend's birthday after not being invited to her wedding? Okay, so I first met my friend Jane, female 29, studying abroad. We were really good friends during our travels, and after college, we actively stayed in touch, visiting each other in our respective different cities. I met her boyfriend, Bob, now husband, when they first started dating, and have met her college friends and parents. Bob and Jane decided to move to my city right before lockdown, so during lockdown, we were in each other's bubbles. We've celebrated each other's birthdays, we've had Friendsgiving, Christmas parties together, etc. 2021, Bob and Jane got engaged in August, and when they came back, I threw them an engagement party. I bought her this wine glass that said, "Wedding Planning Wine Glass," and every time she used it, she would text me a photo of her with it. In 2022, I threw Bob a 30th birthday party, but then this was also the first year I wasn't invited to her birthday. I had texted Bob asking what the plan was, and he told me they were going out of the state for her birthday. However, on Instagram, I saw them posting pictures of them renting a cabin with some friends, so I felt awkward. Then I wasn't invited to the bachelorette party. I didn't find this too big of a deal because Jane has some really close childhood friends and sorority friends, but then nothing about the wedding. The wedding happened this May, and it was a big wedding, like 200 people probably, and I wasn't invited. I was really hurt to say the least, but I didn't say anything. I just tried to move on. I haven't talked to them really since before the wedding. They didn't wish me a happy birthday, and they couldn't attend my birthday shindig because they were out of town. I'm noticing that if I don't reach out to either of them, they don't reach out to me at all. Now Bob has reached out and asked me to plan Jane's birthday party because he says I'm the best at planning these things. And I told him I was hurt about not being invited, and he said, "Well, we had limited space. Don't make it a big deal. We want you to be at her birthday." I really don't want to do it, and I don't really feel any desire to be friends with them. Am I being a petty jerk? Edit. To clarify about Bob's birthday party, Jane asked me to help plan it. That was the last time I've seen them in person, March of 2022. Not the jerk. Space at the wedding wasn't a problem if they had 200 guests. They don't want you to be at her birthday, they want your skills in planning out her birthday. Bob said as much. Tell Bob there are obviously around 200 people that they're closer to than you, so he should ask one of those people to plan the party instead. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. How are they not going to invite you to their wedding, then expect you to not only come to their birthday party, but to help plan it? They obviously don't view you as a friend, but as an event planner. Dump them. Schooled in compliance. This happened in the late 80s, early 90s in the UK, but the compliance runs for over 5 years. Puberty hit me hard and early, just as I started high school. I was 11 years old. If that wasn't enough to deal with, it also saw, between the acne, eczema, psoriasis, my skin becoming a huge red and blotchy mess of blisters, acne breakouts to the point just laying down left little red spots on my shirts and bed sheets. Over the summer between first and second year, it got considerably worse. None of the medicated creams were helping, and the only time I got any sort of relief was when I was giving something else for the frequent chest infections I got, but that wasn't a long-term solution. The second year of high school gave us a whole new bunch of school rules to abide by. This is where the compliance begins. By the end of the first week of the year, I'd already had complaints about my appearance. My form tutor, Mrs. G, an amazing woman, understood the issues I was having, not just with the skin, but my home life too. My folks had split, so our income wasn't great. Mom worked 2 jobs, and her mental health wasn't the best either, dealing with a messy divorce, etc. But apparently, the little stains on my shirt were against the new business-like dress code, meant to prepare us for our work lives after school. So letters went home, and I got a detention. Mom was annoyed, so we instigated an undershirt rule and short-sleeve shirts to leave the worst areas open, and we got our GP to issue a medical note regarding my skin. After all, I was there almost every week, it seems. This wasn't enough, and the more unforgiving teachers really kicked up about my arms being on show and using the words appalling and detrimental to the learning environment, despite my classmates knowing about the issues and not being overly bothered. So I was told off again, and this time sent up to the head of year tutor for a formal meeting, now Mr. E. He was a rather amiable older guy who taught languages, and he had a well-known catchphrase in the school. I like it. I do it myself, just not in school, which was used liberally when he caught students doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. He was apologetic, knowing it was a medical issue, and he requested the GP to do something, repeating the line about it being detrimental to the learning environment, and that being in the business of learning, I had to conform. I was given 14 days for my skin to improve, or I would be placed in more detentions as per policy. 2 weeks go by, and my skin from stress was breaking out everywhere. So I end up in detention each night for a week, missing the school bus, which really upset my mom and her boss, given she had to come and collect me, since it would have taken me over an hour to walk home. Each time, Mr. E or another year tutor was there, complaining about the state of my skin and asking why I wasn't taken to a doctor. Each time, my mom showing the appointment slips and notes from the GP. Finally, it seemed like my arms were settling, just as my face erupted with acne, and shaving my face was a mess. This upset the school even more. So my mom suggested that one of the teachers, like Mr. E, attend a doctor's appointment with me and to tell the doctor what they thought. They discussed this, and eventually it was decided that the teacher to come along was Mr. E himself. Mr. E complained at the order that came from the headmaster, a grizzled old teacher who had a dirty unkempt beard and eyebrows like rutting caterpillars, and he passed on his complaints to me and my mother. I did my best to ignore his eyes that seemed to be drilling into me angrily. As my mom went in to speak to my doctor first for her appointment, she explained what was happening as I was called in next. Mr. E stormed into the room ahead of me, immediately trying to lay down school rules. I remember phrases like, "This is school policy," and "Our job is to prepare them for working life," and "I don't care about side effects of medication. It needs to be done now." The doctor looked down over his glasses and just asked, "You sure?" smiling at my mom. To which Mr. E did an impression like a goldfish. He asked to see my back and arms, so I showed him. For the first time, Mr. E saw the full extent of the issue and just went white. The doctor said to anyone who was listening, "Stress and puberty don't help conditions like this, and they will, given time, normally settle down." He asked if I'd been using the cream, and I nodded, as he picked at one of the problematic areas, removing one of the plaques, saying he sent this to the lab as it looked a little unusual. Mr. E remained quiet as he examined me further, looking at how easy my skin bled in certain areas. "You're a teacher?" he said, looking at Mr. E. "I'm a school governor for X school, our immediate rival, and I'm also on the local education authority board." Mr. E's color still hadn't returned, but he nodded. The doc then went to his computer and typed out another letter, this time effectively adding that I can be excused from the usual rules as a new medical policy was being written by the LEA that all schools must follow. He then told Mr. E he could leave. He sat and chatted to both me and my mom for a while and basically said to continue what I was doing and it will clear up. He said that the letters will be at the desk along with another prescription for us both. Mom gave Mr. E the letter and just said she hopes this puts an end to the nonsense. Mom didn't bother dropping Mr. E off back at school. The next day, Mr. E ignored me. And to be honest, most of the teachers were either their usual grouchy self or sickly sweet, with Mrs. G being her usual self, asking about the appointment as if she had found out what had gone down while in a staff meeting. End of term was upon us, so for a whole fortnight I didn't bother shaving and just let my face rest. So the return to school, I shaved and cleaned up as best I could. And Mr. E was immediately on my case, be it my work in his French and Spanish class or just in general. I'd go home and tell Mom all about it and she would take notes. Now into year 9, or third year of high school, 14 years old, it's 1991. Skin was healing in some places, but my face looked like a volcano, and I'd grown out a little neat mustache, which my mom helped me neatly trim, and we had managed to sort out the really dry lips so I could eat and drink without them splitting, which had put me off food. Now the new medical exemption had come into effect, forcing the school to change their rules. As I got off the bus, I could see the teachers immediately go into meltdown over the facial hair, and they weren't happy. I got to lunchtime before I was dragged by my collar into the year's tutor office and had 3 of them and a deputy head lay into me about it. They demanded I remove it, handing me a single cheap razor that looked as if it had been used. I refused to shave, citing my medical note and that I wouldn't use someone else's razor purely for my own safety given the existing issues. So I was sent home. It seems my mom had been called, so she had called the doctor about it given his role in the LEA. I arrived at school the next day, my mustache still in place, and was called into the headmaster's office, only to be introduced to the chair of the LEA and my doctor, with the head looking a little browbeaten. Apparently, the chair had already been shown photos of my back and arms by my doctor and could see what's happening with my face and the neat mustache. He asked me a few questions and smiled, saying this wasn't my fault, etc. And that a new rule, especially for my school, was being put in place, and it would be checked frequently, and I or any student could ask for a surprise check to be made by LEA staff. The new rule was, if students were meant to live by the strict dress and appearance code, then so were the teachers, and only those with medical exemptions like mine were allowed, but it had to be neat and tidy. I was there when they made the announcement over the PA system. It was reconfirmed in the school assemblies over the following week. Letters went home to parents, and it seemed that there was a sigh of relief among them, as it seems I wasn't the only one getting grief from the rules that had been in place. The teachers had 2 weeks to adjust. The whole LEA was there to check the teachers, and a number had public meltdowns in regard to their appearance, including the deputy head. Mrs. B, who normally wore layers of makeup and blue eyeshadow, who swore up and down she was exempt because she was the deputy head. Stories spread around the school like wildfire. Even Mr. R, the headmaster, lost his beard. Yes, I got more grief about it, but Mrs. G kept them away from my grades. The mustache stayed until the end of my time in high school. Funnily enough, over that summer, my skin seemed to clear up almost instantaneously. So by my first day of college to do my A-levels, my face was clear and I could shave off the mustache. My brother attended the school the September after I left. The teachers didn't give him a hard time for fear of what he would do, but the firm rule stayed in place about teachers' appearance until the school merged with the rival back in 2013. My friend sent me a screenshot of an active and verified Tinder profile of my boyfriend. A friend of mine sent me some screenshots of a Tinder profile that had an active badge, indicating that the profile was online in the past 2 hours, and it was verified. The profile had several photos of my boyfriend, so I asked him about it. He insisted that it was a fake profile, claiming that he had encountered similar situations before where someone else used his pictures. He also stated that he had deleted his Tinder account a long time ago. What struck me as odd was that the profile showed the user being last online 3 kilometers away from his home, which is quite far, even considering GPS inaccuracies. I found all of this strange because verified profiles usually require selfies with specific gestures. Additionally, the profile included many of my boyfriend's real hobbies, personality traits, college courses, and profession. If the profile was indeed fake, it would have been created by someone who knows him quite well. Things took a turn for the worse when I asked him to download Tinder and log in with his account. I expected him to download it and show me that he didn't have an account, or if he did, that it was inactive and the other profile was indeed fake. However, he refused, emphasizing that relationships are built on trust and that I should trust him, especially because I had wrongly suspected him in the past and he was tired of having to prove himself. Now I'm at a loss. I love him and want to trust him, but the profile seemed very convincing with its numerous photos, accurate description, and verification. He could have just spent the 5 minutes showing me his account to put my mind at ease, but instead, he insisted on the importance of trust. The only thing he did was show me that all the photos from the profile were available on his Instagram at some point since last year, suggesting that someone could have used them. Another odd thing is that he didn't seem bothered by the verified fake profile using his photos. I mean, who wouldn't be upset by that? I even offered to help find the fake profile, but he showed no interest whatsoever. I'm not sure what to do now. Should I ignore this and just blindly trust him? Update. The profile existed for at least 6 months, which is a significant achievement for a fake profile. I know this because a friend had already chatted with that profile in January. The funniest part is that right after I left my boyfriend's home, the profile suddenly got deleted. What a coincidence, right? A 6-month-old fake profile being deleted on the exact same day I confronted my boyfriend about it. It's definitely his account. You knew this when he wouldn't show you him logging in. Relationships are based on trust, he says, while not giving you any reason to trust him. Says it all, really. I'd be done with him. He's not interested in your comfort. That's a deal breaker. Am I the jerk for being petty when my cousin kicked me off her Hulu account? I, female 23, am currently in college. I live with roommates and I don't have a lot of money at the moment. I can afford necessities, but I need to count my pennies before buying any luxuries. I have a cousin, Jean, who's 27, who I'm fairly close with. I don't have any siblings, and I think of her as the sister I never had. Last year, I was in a much better financial position. It eventually went downhill due to me being unexpectedly laid off from my job and a bunch of surprise expenses, hence why I'm not doing so great now. Last year, Jean was in a tough spot as she had car problems and had to move back in with her parents after getting evicted from her apartment. She was working a minimum wage job and was really struggling. I paid the mechanic bill for her car, which was around $300, and I loaned Jean an additional $900 to help her with expenses. I know the whole deal about loaning family members money and wasn't too worried about whether or not she'd ever pay me back. Jean paid me back $400 5 months later and told me she'd pay back the rest when she could, but she never did. Once again, I don't mind. I know she needed the money. I'd feel absolutely horrible if I watched her be unable to afford necessities when I could have helped. But here's where I may be the jerk. A couple of months ago, Jean started a Hulu account that she pays for. She gave me the login and told me I can use it. Last week, I noticed that I couldn't log into the account and I texted Jean to ask about it. She read the text but didn't respond for a few hours, so I called her. Her boyfriend picked up and he told me that they changed the password and explained that he doesn't think it's reasonable that I get to use their Hulu without paying for it. He said if I want to share the account again, I should contribute to cover the cost of upgrading the subscription to unlimited devices. I told him that's fine, but no thanks, I'd rather not then. I'll get my streaming fix elsewhere. I may have come off as abrupt or blunt, I guess, because Jean later called me and accused me of being condescending and disrespectful to her boyfriend. I apologized and told her I didn't mean to come off that way and repeated our conversation to her. Jean said she was sorry, but they can't let me freeload. I laughed and told Jean that she can't possibly be calling me a freeloader. She said I am if I'm just going to use her for the subscription. I told her that I thought we had a relationship where we helped each other out and brought up the money I loaned her, which she hadn't even paid back fully. Jean called me petty and said that doesn't make me entitled to use her account. I told her I don't even care about the Hulu account. She said I'm materialistic for keeping score and told me to leave her alone and hung up the phone. My aunt and parents are now also saying I'm petty and telling me to apologize to Jean as I'm not treating her like a good family member. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's not keeping score to remind her that she owes you $500 or that you gifted her $300. If you talk to her boyfriend again, ask if he's the one who's going to be setting up the repayment schedule. She should be paying you interest. This is ridiculous freeloading on her part. And until your aunt and parents make good on her debt for her, they have nothing to say on the matter. Not the jerk, and never ever loan her money again. It's also gross that she's letting her boyfriend interfere in her relationships with others. I would distance myself from them. Today I messed up thinking we had bed bugs. My wife and I have been a bit itchy lately and started noticing small bite marks. Then the other night I noticed a small bug crawling on me, probably the size of a poppy seed. I started inspecting the bed more and discovered dozens of them around our head and pillow area. After doing a bunch of online research, it really seemed like they were bed bugs. We started going through the signs and felt so stupid. We had seen some black splotches on our pillows and thought it was just sweat spots, but now realizing that it was from the bed bugs. I had seen some random specks of dirt in the bed and thought nothing of it, but then realized it must have been from the bedbug shells. We notified our landlord, but he wouldn't pay for treatment and said since it wasn't an apartment that it was our responsibility because we must have gotten some old furniture or clothes that brought the bugs in with them. We thought about it, but couldn't think of any other way that the bugs came. Nonetheless, we contacted an exterminator and scheduled an appointment. We canceled all of our upcoming plans with friends. We got someone willing to babysit, even with the bugs, and did an aggressive deep clean of all of the rooms. We washed all of the bedding, linens, laundry, pillows, vacuumed every gap possible. Under the bed spring, we found further proof of the bed bugs by finding some red splotches around the box spring staples. We put the vacuum outside in a bunch of garbage bags. Even after all of the cleaning, we immediately found dozens more bed bugs crawling around us. We were mortified and didn't know what else to do, so just had to spend multiple sleepless nights waiting in the same bed because we didn't want the bed bugs to spread to other rooms. When the exterminator finally came, I was able to show him a sample of the bugs we caught on a piece of tape. He examined them with a magnifying glass and immediately said they weren't bed bugs, but they were mites. We had a bird's nest right outside our window that we had left because we didn't want to hurt the birds. Well, it turns out that there was a dead bird in it that was absolutely infested with mites, and they were crawling through the window looking for more food. He inspected everything else, and none of it was bed bugs. The pillow was just sweat spots. The box spring staples were just rusty. We had to pay a few $100s for the exterminator to dispose of the nest and spray for mites, and our bed bug problem is finally gone. Refuse my mother entry to your horse track? Don't expect access to our personal road. My granddad used to own a piece of land next to a horse racetrack. Their land almost surrounded my granddad's, except for him having access to a heavily trafficked public road. The racetrack was laid out in such a way that their exercise track was placed north of my granddad's land, while the main track with the stadium was placed to the south. Way back when the racetrack was built, they had asked my granddad if they could transport their horses across his land. There was already a maintenance road in place, and as they only moved their horses, he didn't really mind, as they also supported the local village. As a small thank you for this, they allowed him and his guests to watch the races for free. Normally, it cost around $5 in our local currency. Not that much, but it allowed him to take me and all of my cousins to watch the horses for free. Anyhow, fast forward a couple of years, and my granddad passed. My mother, who inherited the land, tried to bring her grandkids, my niece, to the racetrack to see the horses, just as my granddad used to do. At the counter, she's told that she has to pay for admission. It's not really that big of a deal, as she thought that they didn't know that she now owned the land. However, when she writes to the track to rectify the situation, they tell her that she won't get admission for free as it was a one-time deal they had struck with my granddad that was now off. Enter the petty revenge. A few months later, when we had planned to cut down some of the trees for lumber, my mother told the contractors to accidentally leave 1 or 2 logs across the maintenance road. The racetrack, now having to load their horses on trolleys as they had to use the busy public road instead of our maintenance one, almost immediately sent an email to my mother apologizing and offering her the same deal as my granddad had received if we would remove the logs. She only informed them that the one-time deal they had struck with my granddad was off. In the end, after some wrangling, we ended up with a deal where they now have to pay my mother around $400 every month in addition to her and her guests having free admission. Karen throws a plate at our server, ends up getting arrested. I wasn't at my restaurant today when this happened, but I was there when we dealt with this woman for the first time. Background. About 2 months ago, a woman came into my restaurant and ordered our country fried steak breakfast. It says on the menu exactly what it is. It's a country fried steak, 2 eggs, bacon, 2 biscuits, and a full mug of sausage gravy. She gets about halfway through her plate of food and calls the server over. "Excuse me, but does this gravy have pork in it?" "Yes, ma'am, and so does the bacon." "What? I can't have pork. You tricked me because you knew I don't eat pork. You are a devil. God forgive you." I want to point out that there was no outward indication that she couldn't eat pork. She then proceeds to start throwing up right there in the dining room, after which she threw her plate at our hostess. I came out of the back with my dessert chef. We're both pretty big dudes, so we're security in addition to our main roles. The lady sees 2 big dudes making a beeline for her table and decides she doesn't want to wait around and see what we have to say. She bolts from the restaurant. I drive the hostess to the emergency dental clinic and then bring her and the security footage over to the police to file a report. 2 months go by and nothing. She doesn't get caught. My hostess is not getting justice. Until last night. Lady walks right into the place and asks the hostess for a table. Mind you, this is the same server she threw the plate at. I don't know if she didn't recognize her or if she just thought she would get away with it. So the hostess sits her down, walks into the back, and calls 911. Lets them know there's a wanted criminal sitting in our restaurant. The look of shocked defeat on that lady's face when 4 uniformed officers walked in and headed straight for her table was so satisfying. I want to print out a still from the security tape and hang it on my office wall. I don't have any details on what charges she's facing, whatever her bail situation is, or anything like that, but she left the premises in handcuffs, so I'll call it a win. I'm just glad she was dumb enough to return to the scene of the crime. Karen demands to use the family property for her upcoming wedding. I'm 25 and my sister is 29. I also have a younger sister who's 8. When I was 14, my mom sent me to live with her parents. Her excuse was that they needed me to help out. I believe she just didn't want to deal with a growing male teen. My grandparents owned an amazing property in the mountains that has an amazing view. We also have some horses and other critters. They were also quite wealthy as well. They both passed away 4 years ago, a month apart. They gave me the property because I would appreciate and respect it more, while my mom and sisters got money and other assets, overall valued it more than the property. In the past 4 years, I turned part of the property into a venue for mainly weddings. Grandparents knew of this idea and they thought it was a good one. We are busy and usually booked about 8 months out. My sister got engaged 1.5 years ago and said she wants to get married at the property. I said yes, just let me know the date as soon as possible so I can make sure that it's booked. I never got a date. I followed up several times and kept asking her and she would just brush me off. 2 weeks ago, I got the wedding invitation, stating the property is the location and the date, which is September of this year. I immediately called her to say we're already booked for that date and we can't accommodate her. Well, now her, my mom, other family, my partner's family, as well as other flying monkeys have been blowing up on me. They are also calling and writing reviews for my business. I asked them to stop and I called my sister, telling her that literally all she had to do was tell me when she wanted her date so I could block it and I would take care of everything else. She went off on how I'm ruining her day. It's our family's property, how she already sent out the invitations and couldn't go back now. I should tell the other people to cancel. They've been on the books for over a year now and I actually like them. Family is more important. After the last big blow up, I started communicating strictly through the business, using our recorded line as well as email. I suggested 3 other dates around the same time, but that's not good enough. I'm being resentful and a jerk. ETA. Most likely Monday, I plan on getting in contact with the couple and seeing if I can take them to dinner or something to explain the situation. I'm thinking of giving them a discount, getting a guest list, and being tight on security on our part. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to name my business for reasons. Thanks for the offers of writing good reviews, but I can't accept it. I like to earn everything I have or am given. I've made a lot of contacts in this business, and I'm now having to call on them to help me out. Just do me a favor. Be kind to everyone. Show love, compassion, and respect. Not the jerk, but your sister is a giant jerk for expecting you to cancel another couple's date for, what, selfish family? She needed to tell you the date, and she didn't. That's on her. Who sends out invitations for a date before even contacting the venue? Not the jerk. I would suggest getting a lawyer involved before your family causes harm to your business. Send them all cease and desist letters. This is your property and business. Do not allow them to discredit it just because they're not getting their way. I'd also put a PSA out that her wedding will not be at your venue. That way a bunch of people don't show up and ruin this other lovely couple's wedding by causing a scene. One thing I've learned is that you never mix family and business. Family will never respect your business because they feel entitled to it. So it's best to only offer family a small discount, but still make them go through all the proper channels, or they don't get whatever service you provide. Am I the jerk for expecting my wife to prioritize me on Father's Day instead of going to a funeral? My wife and I have 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Our 6-year-old is on the spectrum. It goes without saying that this is a very stressful position, and neither of us get very much of a break from this. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, and I have a full-time job. As happy as our kids make us, I don't think it's selfish for us to both desire breaks. We get them every here and there, but we made a deal to have 2 guaranteed breaks in a year, our birthdays and Mother's and Father's Day. On those days, the one parent takes on the brunt of the burden so the other can get a day to relax. Since our youngest was about 2, we practiced this. I've never failed to give my wife the day off she deserves. I'll schedule her a spa day or something she really wants to do and get her out of the house so she can relax while I'm on daddy duty. Then, when she gets back, our kids give her cards and gifts and we get a meal from her favorite place after they go to bed. My wife has been less consistent and doesn't really do as much as I do for her. The last year, she hasn't really done anything. I typically try not to hold it against her, as it is undoubtedly hard, but it does feel kind of unfair. This Father's Day, I planned something for myself as she made no indication of doing something for me. I warned her a week in advance and she said it was okay. This was until about 3 days ago. My wife's old boss's dad passed. She was invited to the funeral by the boss and she chose to attend it, which was about 2 hours away. As a result, I had to cancel all of my plans and take care of the kids. She was supposed to be home at around 5 in the evening, but she didn't get home until around 10. The kids were already asleep, and my wife neglected to help them even get a Father's Day card for me. We got into a huge argument when she got back. I told her that I felt like she really dropped the ball on this and didn't give me a break like I usually do for her. She told me that she's home with the kids all day, just about every day, and I only have to help out after work, and as far as she's concerned, I regularly get a break and she doesn't. I told her working isn't a break and that I really was looking forward to today. She said that someone had passed and I was being completely selfish trying to make it about me. I said that it was someone she didn't even know, who was the parent of someone she hasn't seen in over a year, and I didn't think I was being selfish and asking her to prioritize my needs just as a gesture like I do hers. She's been upset at me since and we're not talking. Am I the jerk? Edit. My wife is not hooking up with her boss. The funeral was real. I dropped her off with some of her old coworkers so they could carpool to the funeral. It was real, and I've seen multiple pictures of the service from multiple Facebook friends of hers, and she was there for longer because the service went longer than expected. I'm going against the grain here, not the jerk. Your wife could have easily gone to the funeral and come home at 5, perhaps brought dinner, taken care of the kids while you relaxed. She also absolutely should have helped the kids make or do something special for you. Old boss's dad, in my funeral book, that does not really justify leaving family for an entire day, driving 4 hours, and ignoring Father's Day. The funeral was just an excuse to get out of the house. You may have bigger issues than missing Father's Day. ETA, tell your wife you would like to do a redo. Pick another Sunday for Father's Day. Maybe she'll actually help the kids do something fun for you. Not the jerk. If a man did this to his wife on Mother's Day, he would get blasted. Exactly. All the "you're the jerk" posts seem to have just seen funeral and completely ignored that it was for her former boss's dad. Plus, she didn't even get him a card. It took about 10 minutes for me and my kids to get a card for my husband for Father's Day. She didn't even do the bare minimum. This is screaming to me that your wife wants adult time. You get to converse with your colleagues every day. She doesn't. She has you to socialize with. And is that it? Does she go out with friends without the kids? To me, this seems like she jumped at the chance to socialize with people she knew and could have adult conversations with. Seriously, think about this and ask her if she's really happy being a stay-at-home mom. She may miss working and the social aspect that comes with it. I think this is an everyone sucks here situation, but really, you both need to communicate better. Every time there's a post on here with a wife or stay-at-home mom with poor behavior, and the husband not doing anything wrong, there's always a few comments saying everyone sucks here and they both need to communicate better. You gave no examples of him being a bad communicator. It's all examples of the wife potentially wanting something and her not communicating that she wants it. No jerks here. You aren't wrong for expecting her to plan something on Father's Day, but she's clearly burnt out being a stay-at-home mom. The funeral was for an ex-boss's parent. She didn't need to attend. She saw an opportunity for more downtime, which she desperately needs, and took it. Am I the jerk for leaving my surprise wedding because I felt blindsided? Last week, I, 30 female, was invited to a supposedly fancy party by my longtime boyfriend, Mark, who's 32. We had been dating for 5 years and we had discussed marriage before. There were no immediate plans for a wedding though. Excited about the event, I dressed up in my best attire and arrived at the designated venue. As I entered the grand hall, I was completely taken aback to see all of our family, friends, and acquaintances gathered, eagerly waiting. It turns out, Mark had orchestrated an elaborate surprise wedding for us without my knowledge. Everyone erupted into applause as I stood there, shocked and overwhelmed. I just felt a mix of emotions. While I love Mark and had dreamed of our future together, the idea of getting married without any prior discussion or consent felt like a breach of trust. So I pulled Mark aside and tried to express my concerns and reservations about the surprise wedding. I explained that I wanted a say in the planning process, to be a part of the decision-making, and to have the chance to prepare mentally and emotionally for such a significant milestone in our lives. However, Mark dismissed my concerns, saying that he thought it would be a romantic gesture and that I would be thrilled. In that moment, I faced a difficult choice: go along with the surprise wedding, putting on a smile despite feeling unsettled, or stand up for my autonomy and voice my true feelings. I ultimately made the decision not to proceed with the surprise wedding, much to the disappointment and confusion of our guests. Now I find myself at odds with Mark, our families, and even some of our friends who believe I overreacted and spoiled a beautiful moment. However, I firmly believe that a marriage should be a joint decision with open communication and shared expectations. Everyone's excuse for this is, I have always talked about marrying Mark. And again, the problem isn't marrying him. The problem is not having any say in my wedding. Mark thought I'd appreciate it because I always spoke about how stressful planning a wedding must be. Yes, I think it's stressful. It is, but I'd still like planning one. After this whole ordeal, everyone asked if Mark and I were ending things, and which I replied no. I emphasized towards them and Mark I still wanted to marry him, and most feel like this is making me more of a jerk since I just wasted a perfectly fine wedding. So, am I the jerk for refusing to attend my own surprise wedding, even though it was intended as a romantic gesture? Edit. I love surprises. It's a thing everyone has known me to love. Mark, knowing the fact that I wanted to marry him and that I said wedding planning was stressful, thought a surprise wedding would be perfect. A surprise engagement is bland because it will always be a surprise, but not a wedding. He threw this wedding for the surprise, but explained how in a couple days we could do a courthouse wedding to make it legal. This was his only way to surprise me. I love spontaneity, but legal marriage or not, I want a say in my wedding. To choose the perfect date, to choose my bridesmaids, to pick out my cake. Again, due to these thoughts, everyone thinks I'm the jerk because I could have gone along with the party and do a redo legal wedding. But again, I felt blindsided and confused, so I left. Not the jerk. If he marries you without having to ask you, what else would he do with the same excuse? Surprise, I got the new car we talked about. Oh, you wanted to choose the model? Or have the full experience? Surprise, I got us a house. We talked so much about a new house for us and the kids. We're still having kids, right? I exaggerate, but you get where I'm going. Make sure you keep control over your own life. Not the jerk. I'd also be asking all my family and friends if they knew about this. Who told this man this was a good idea? You didn't overreact. You didn't make a bad call. You didn't do anything wrong. Your response was your body and mind telling you that this was not okay. Anyone who thinks you ruined this is not someone who has your best interests in mind. I don't care if it's your own mother. They do not have your best interests in mind. No jerks here. He did what you kind of said you wanted, but you weren't clear that this wasn't really what you wanted. You didn't want what he did and bailed. I would be curious how Mark feels about all of this. I know you said you wanted to get married in the future, but how about Mark? He must have been terribly hurt and embarrassed. I can't imagine that he's just brushing it off and moving forward like nothing ever happened. I feel very sorry for him. He saved you a year of hassle and probably a small fortune. He tailored an experience very closely to your stated personality. You're going to marry him eventually anyway. Seems like you're another one of those manipulated by the wedding industrial complex. He's a keeper. You? Maybe not. I'm thinking he's the one who needs to run. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to leave after he found out my mom cuts vegetables for me? I, 30 male, was born with a bone missing in my arm. As a result, I only have one digit. If that wasn't enough, it was in a fixed position with my digit up by my shoulder and the ligament and tendons really didn't develop, so I can't straighten my arm. My parents were great at making sure I would be independent and able to live by myself. Some things I physically can't do, like tie shoelaces. For the most part, I can cut anything by myself, but I struggle with doing fine dices. Every other month or so, my mom will finally cut some veggies for me, usually onion, celery, and carrots, so that I can freeze them. I asked her to do this when I lived on my own for the first time because I was fed up of sending onions flying all over my kitchen if I used a knife, or it turning to mush if I used the food processor. When my girlfriend, who's 28, started dating me, she told me that she couldn't cook, but also didn't have an interest in learning to cook. I said this was fine because I like to cook, so when she moved in, I became the de facto cook. She has never expressed a problem with my mom cutting vegetables for me. She actually preferred it, as she has said she couldn't cut them finely for me. Her brother, who's 35, is currently staying with us and has been for the last 4 weeks since his ex threw him out because of how lazy he is. He doesn't have a job. I don't think he has for the 3 years I've been with girlfriend, nor is he looking for one. He also doesn't help around the house. We were his last resort because no one else would take him in, not even their parents. My mom comes over yesterday with the freezer bags of diced veggies for me. Brother-in-law was annoyed when he saw my mom with the veggies because that morning, girlfriend and I had spoken to him about not being so lazy and getting a job because he's an adult and needs to stop relying on people like a kid. Girlfriend's words, not mine. He was annoyed because he saw me as being a hypocrite because I was getting my mom to cut things for me like a kid. After my mom left, he accused her of coddling me and treating me like I'm incompetent. For me, this was a crossed line because this is something I physically can't do and my mom is just being helpful. I told brother-in-law that I wanted him to leave and that he was no longer welcome in my home. Girlfriend moved in with me to my house. Girlfriend was upset that I asked her brother to leave as I made a decision without her input and she left with him. Since brother-in-law and girlfriend have left, I have texts from him and their family accusing me of being a mummy's boy, telling me I need to cut the apron strings and cut my own vegetables like an adult. Girlfriend hasn't answered my texts. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to leave? Edit. I do use frozen veggies. They are great for a lot of applications, but definitely not for fresh eating. I get some of the harder vegetables like butternut squash already cut up and frozen. Though frozen onions, I seem to only be able to get sliced. Update. So, girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend, came around this afternoon to collect her belongings. It was very anticlimactic, but I'm not upset that she's gone because she's shown me her true colors, though she had blamed me for it all and not apologized for her or her brother's actions. She had written a post on her Facebook on Saturday basically bad-mouthing me, calling me all sorts of names, and said that I was a mummy's boy and refused to cut the apron strings. I didn't see it. I don't have Facebook, but my sister, who's 28, did, and she screenshotted and sent it to me. The comment section was a dumpster fire because her friends were saying things like, "Of course he needs help, he has one arm," and telling her that she should be helping me. She has since deleted the post. After my sister saw the post, she called our uncle to let him know what had happened and suggested that he came around and changed my locks for me because she doesn't trust ex-girlfriend and wanted to make sure I was safe. As ex-girlfriend left, my uncle arrived to change the locks, which angered her. She got upset and asked if we didn't trust her. I hesitated and my uncle smirked and said no. After ex-girlfriend left, my uncle teased me about it taking so long to realize she wasn't a nice person. None of them liked her, but didn't say anything because they could see I was happy. Apparently, she and my sister loathed each other as my sister was angry about the way she was treating me. I was just too enamored to see it. My sister has also sent me the number of one of her friends, Jane, who's 29, and told me that Jane is waiting for me to text her for a date when I'm ready, and that this is the last time she's giving me the number of a friend. I've known Jane for years through my sister. She's lovely and I do like her. We get on incredibly well, but Jane was in a long-term relationship before I got with my ex. Jane works as a chef in a local hotel and has previously offered to help me with chopping because she's a good egg. So there's that. Girlfriend and her lazy freeloading brother need to stay gone. Good riddance. Don't let them back in, either of them, for any reason. These are not your people. Not the jerk, unless you let these freeloaders back in your home. Today I messed up by accidentally announcing I'm pregnant. As some of you may know, it's Father's Day tomorrow in the UK. So as tradition goes, I got my dad a Father's Day card. No harm done, right? I, being the absolute comedian I am, decided to get my dad a card aimed at grandfathers because he's old and I wanted to rub it in his face. So my day starts off normal. I visit my parents, I drop off the card and a present for the old man, and I go off on my merry way. What I didn't know was that my dad decided to open the card a day earlier and proceeded to take it completely the wrong way. Not even an hour ago, I look at my phone and I have 10 missed calls from my dad and 7 from my mom, accompanied by text messages from my mom asking if I was pregnant and if it was an accident or not. Confused, I called her and she demands to know the answer. Before I even get a word in, she just starts whooping in joy, shouting about how she can't wait to be a grandma and how my dad hasn't stood up or even moved after reading the card. I had no idea what she was talking about until she mentioned the card that said grandpa on it. They had both assumed this was my way of announcing that I was pregnant with my first. I immediately burst into laughter, barely able to get my words out. My mom, flabbergasted, trying desperately to find out why I was currently dying down the phone. I managed to get my composure and let her know that I was not in fact pregnant and was just playing a joke on my dad about his age. After explaining, my mom was understandably disappointed, but also did find the humor in the card and agreed that my dad's hair did look like the top of Mount Everest. My dad finally stood up and called me every word he could think of whilst defending his hair, stating it was a fashion statement. He did say thank you for the card though. All we needed was a signature. Wife and I recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and this story occurred during the lead up to our wedding, so some details may be fuzzy. We met a bit later in life. I'd never wanted kids. She was a single mom of twins, 12 at the time. We were friends first, but eventually it was evident this was the one, and we made plans to get married. Being a bit older, the whole traditional wedding thing wasn't for us, so we settled on a destination wedding in the Caribbean. Number one to-do list item prepping for the wedding trip is passports for the kids. While gathering the necessary documents, we learned that for minors, you need both parents to be involved. This is where the details are fuzzy, but essentially their biological dad needed to sign and notarize a form and provide a copy of his ID. We reached out numerous times, but there was always some excuse or promise that it would be taken care of next week. Clearly this wasn't going to happen, so it was time for another tactic. The alternative to the required forms from the biological dad was to show that my wife-to-be had full and sole custody of their kids. But since they were quite young when the kids arrived, they had never formalized any sort of custody agreement. The kids had just always been in the care of their mom. So we hire an attorney, go to court, and get the custody order. Biological dad didn't even bother to show up. Finally, passport application submitted, and all is well and good, except this whole fiasco was time-consuming and expensive. So now I'm feeling petty. While there wasn't, until recently, a custody order, there was an old support order. It was a pitiful monthly amount, but after being ignored for years, the outstanding balance had grown sizable. We contacted the government agency that handles such matters, but they would need to serve him with some paperwork to proceed. We provided what we thought was his address, his mother's address, some other family addresses, but ultimately he avoided service. Time to get creative. He and the kids were friends on social media, so I started doing some investigating to see what I could learn. It turns out he's quite involved in a local recreational sports league. They have custom jerseys and the whole 9 yards. From there, it was easy enough to find the league schedule online and discover that he and the team would be at XYZ Park on next Wednesday evening at 7. This information we provided to our contact at the government agency, who at this point had also taken an extra interest in the case. The story we hear a few days later is that the county sheriff showed up to the park on the date and time we provided, stops the game, walks onto the field, and serves biological dad with the paperwork. Eventually, this leads to a warrant for non-payment, and he has to pay a lump sum, about half of what the custody process cost us, to avoid jail. It would have been so much easier to just sign the forms, man. Am I the jerk for asking my boyfriend to scuba dive again after he almost had a panic attack? Hi everyone. The boyfriend is a bit angry with me at the minute, and it's got me wondering if I was in the wrong. My boyfriend, Josh, 22 male, and I, 22 female, booked ourselves in to do a scuba diving course in Tanzania. We started it a few days ago. It involves going through scuba theory, where we were tested, and we passed, and the instructors brought us to the beach to give us a go today. I really enjoyed it. My boyfriend less so. We're both strong swimmers, which is why we decided to try it. However, once my boyfriend got under the water, he started to panic. He immediately surfaced and said he felt like a panic attack was coming on and wanted to leave. He wanted to get out of the gear and sit on the beach to wait for us, but I gently persuaded him to give it another go because I know he would regret it later if he didn't at least try it and waste all the money that he spent. He did give it another go, but struggled and sat on the beach, so the rest of us went back out and had a great time. I joined him after and explained how much fun it was and that we saw some fish. He was really happy for me, so I asked him again if he wants to give it another go, and he just shut me down. He said that me asking before made him feel like he couldn't say no and like he didn't give it a proper go. I argued that he didn't. He didn't even make it out into deeper water to put the things we learned to use. He maintained that he didn't want to have a panic attack in the deeper water and put us in danger, and it's not my place to say whether he tried properly or not because he thinks he did. Was I the jerk? I asked out of a good place because he looked so excited with the fish. I also don't think me asking him to try again was a big deal because he's done this with other similar adventure activities we've tried and always laments he regrets not fully committing to the activity. ETA. Seen comments about me seeing him having a panic attack under the water and that it was a jerk move to ask him to do it again. He never had a panic attack. He came up before he actually had one. That's why I gently asked before he decided to sit out. You're the jerk. It doesn't matter what other activities he regrets not fully committing to. We're talking about water, deep water. I had a panic attack while snorkeling on my honeymoon. My husband and our guide got me out of the water as fast as they could, and no one tried encouraging me to give it another go because money would be wasted. You're the jerk. Not for asking him to scuba dive again, but for later trying to argue that he didn't try hard enough. He's right, it's not your place to say. Your boyfriend did a sensible thing. Also, I do get a small sense of you rubbing it in his face that you had a great time and he missed out. I'm 27, female, and my 27-year-old boyfriend confessed to me that he has feelings for my best friend. So as the title suggests, my boyfriend, Ryan, recently expressed to me a few weeks ago that he's been feeling disconnected in our relationship and he has feelings for my best friend. A bit of backstory. We've been hanging out with my best friend, Ashley, a lot recently. Now, Ryan and Ashley have been friends since they were little, and I met Ashley in high school and have been best friends with her ever since. Ashley and Ryan didn't really talk much in high school. Ryan went to a different high school than me and Ashley. I met Ryan on our last year of high school through our mutual friend, Ashley. Ryan and I hit it off and have been together for almost 9 years. This year, Ryan and I moved in together for the first time and are in the process of buying a house together. A few weeks before our settlement date for our house, Ryan breaks down and says that he has been feeling disconnected in our relationship and that he feels there's something missing. So I asked him what he's missing in our relationship, and he mentions that he feels we don't laugh enough or have banter. He expressed that he has noticed he has more laughs with Ashley and brought up having feelings for her. Hearing this, I was definitely devastated and heartbroken and took some time to process everything. I've noticed that whenever we hang out with Ashley, I do feel like I'm sort of just third-wheeling Ashley and Ryan. They have this connection. They always laugh and they're silly and goofy together. After realizing that he has feelings for Ashley, Ryan has proposed the idea of cutting her off completely. A part of me would want that, but also a part of me feels guilty because they have been friends for a long time. I just don't know what to do. Should I tell Ashley that Ryan has feelings for her, or does Ryan need to just cut her off? First, don't buy a house. Cancel things. You need to talk to him and ask yourself if you're willing to risk being with someone who's admittedly having feelings for someone else, especially because you feel like a third wheel with them. Will you feel like a placeholder or his second choice knowing all of this? Can you live with that? Ryan needs to be honest about his feelings if he wants her, then you need to break up. And yes, Ashley should know so that she can give you space without hurting you accidentally. It does not make much sense to cut off a dear and loyal friend to keep around a disconnected boyfriend that has feelings for someone else, does it? Maybe you can get past this. Maybe you won't worry when he meets a beautiful new colleague or when you introduce him to a new friend you've made. Maybe you won't feel like a second fiddle or a third wheel or like he settled for you. But maybe it's a blessing that Ryan confessed before you entangle your life with him with a shared property. Even if he cuts her off, for him, there's still something missing from your relationship. Am I the jerk for spraying weed killer in my driveway? I'm a somewhat recently new homeowner, moved into my home last year. My driveway is gravel And if you're not familiar with gravel driveways, during the spring and summer months, you have to spray them regularly with weed and grass killer to keep your driveway from becoming an extension of your lawn. I've been doing this about weekly since I moved in, and it's been maintaining my driveway in good condition. I noticed immediately when I moved in that the neighborhood kids will use my driveway as a cut-through to get to their friend's house. My driveway backs up to another neighbor's backyard on another street, and it's essentially a shortcut. I want to be clear that I have no issue with the kids doing this, but I was a little bit peeved that the parents didn't ask me when I moved in as a courtesy. It's clear that they've been doing this for a while with the previous owners, but I still think it would have been respectful of them to make sure it was okay with me to continue. But whatever, no harm, no foul, until today. I sprayed my driveway as usual early this afternoon. As I was finishing up, the kids cut through. I stopped spraying while they were there, waved hello, and resumed once they had cleared the area. Thought that was the end of it, but I just got off the phone with a very angry mother of one of the kids. She told me I have no right to be spraying my driveway with harsh chemicals when the kids are around. I told her I've been doing this for nearly a year now, and it's necessary for me to maintain my property. I respectfully and politely informed her that if she has an issue with her kids being exposed to these chemicals, then they can find another way to get to their friend's house that does not involve cutting through my driveway. That is where she really doubled down and had the audacity to tell me that her kids have been using my driveway as a cut-through for much longer than I've lived in the home, and I have no right to come in and change the status quo. I then said that I have no issues with her kids using the driveway, but unless she would like to purchase the home for me and start paying my mortgage, she has no right to tell me what I can and can't spray on my driveway. Then I hung up. I fear I have now made an enemy of my neighbors, and it's about to get worse, and I'm regretting not simply apologizing and sucking it up. So, am I the jerk for spraying my driveway and refusing to stop when asked by a neighbor? And now you know why the last owner sold. Not the jerk. Put up a fence so no one can cut through the yard. Not the jerk, but you have liability issues if one of them falls and gets hurt on your property. This woman seems to be the type to sue you over this. If I were you, I would put an end to this. Put up cameras and no trespassing signs. I would also consider a fence if it's allowed where you live. Not the jerk. I'll chip in $5 towards a fence. Also, most common weed killers are actually harmless to people in their store-bought form. There's a bit of a misconception about it. My best friend is trying to steal my boyfriend. So my best friend and I, we're both 21 female, had been single for a while before about a year ago when my boyfriend and I met. He asked for my number. At first, I didn't entertain him because he's super attractive, and I thought it was a dare or a joke due to high school pranks that were played on me. However, he stuck around and proved that he actually liked me. When we made it official, I texted my best friend and I told her that I found a boyfriend. She was excited for me and asked for his picture, but I felt that the relationship was too new and volatile, so I didn't send her a picture. I told her I wasn't ready, and she was fine with that. She made a joke that he was probably ugly, but I didn't really respond to it, and we didn't touch that issue again. Fast forward about 2 months, and I felt that we were more secure in the relationship. We took pictures while on a date, and I posted them on Instagram, tagging my boyfriend. Obviously, my best friend saw the post and messaged me, jokingly asking where I found such an attractive guy and if he had a brother. I laughed it off. Looking back, she said something that I hadn't paid much attention to at the time. She mentioned that I was lucky such an attractive guy chose me. It was a bit weird, but it aligned with our usual joking, so I didn't pursue it further. Yesterday, I was at my boyfriend's house and I was texting my best friend on Instagram. You know how on Instagram the username comes up big at the top of the chat? My boyfriend looked over and asked, "Who is that?" "Let's call my best friend Sophie." I replied, "That's Sophie." My boyfriend seemed shocked, and I asked him what was wrong. He pulled out his phone, opened Instagram, and I realized that he and Sophie had a message thread. I found that strange. After reading through the message thread, I discovered that after I tagged my boyfriend in the post, Sophie had messaged him, wanting to be friends without mentioning me, and she started flirting with him. He told her that he had a girlfriend, and she implied that she already knew and saw the photo, also mentioning that she was more attractive than me. My boyfriend didn't engage in conversation after that. I felt super betrayed, so I texted Sophie and I asked why she would message my boyfriend on Instagram. She said she messaged him to test if he would be faithful to me when the time comes. Now, I'm not sure what to believe. If she was testing him, she should have shared this information with you. Of course she was being shady. Your friend sounds like an insecure, jealous jerk. Hearing you found someone and immediately trying to knock you down a peg by saying he's probably ugly is very passive-aggressive towards you. Her messaging him without saying anything to you is another swipe at you. She's saying it was a test because he rejected her and you caught her, but her messaging him in the first place is born from her own insecurities and wanting to feel like she's better than you, like it's a competition. It's not, and she's simply a horrible person who's not mature enough to have some introspection or self-awareness about how she acts. She puts you down and is trying to take your boyfriend. She's not your friend, and you need to get rid of her ASAP, or I can guarantee you this type of girl will only continue to hurt you under the guise of, "It's just a joke," or "It's just a test." She's lying, cut her loose. Keep the guy. He's been honest and stood up for your relationship even when you weren't aware. Green flag for him, lose the friend though. She is not a friend. Am I the jerk for leaving dinner to get my son McDonald's even though food was served? A friend of my wife invited my family, my wife, who's 29, our son, who's 5, and me, 26, male, over for dinner with him, he's 30, and his daughter, who's 5. This friend has always followed a strict diet, which usually led us to eat at his place. But since our kids were infants, we hadn't seen him. For dinner, we were served salmon with quinoa and arugula. My son is usually very easygoing for a 5-year-old. He rarely throws tantrums and isn't a picky eater. However, I could tell from his behavior that he wasn't enjoying the meal. He was picking at his plate, shuffling food around, and although he tried the salmon, he didn't seem to like it. I asked him if he was happy with his dinner, and he said no. I responded with a casual remark like, "Kids, huh?" and asked if there was anything else for my son to eat. My wife's friend explained that his daughter just eats whatever he makes, so he doesn't keep kid food around the house. My wife said it was fine and that our son would be okay. While he's generally mild-mannered, he does get hangry, and it was only the beginning of the night, with potentially another hour or two ahead. I mentioned that our son needed to eat something to have energy for playing and apologized, explaining that I would be gone for just a few minutes to pick something up for him. My wife's friend seemed annoyed, but said he would try to keep my plate warm. I left for approximately 30 minutes and returned with a Happy Meal, including extra fries in case his daughter wanted some, although she wasn't allowed to have any. By the time I got back, dinner was winding down, my son ate his meal, we had dessert, and he went off to play with his friend. It was a minor hiccup during the evening, but overall things went well. We had a good time, although my wife seemed distant afterwards. When we got home, 3 hours after dinner, she told me that I had been rude for no reason at all. I explained that if I hadn't gotten our son food, he would have been difficult the entire way home. She responded that we would have left earlier. I expressed that I was simply trying to address the issue as it arose, and that if her friend had been more accommodating, we wouldn't have found ourselves in that situation in the first place. She got offended on her friend's behalf, and we decided to go to bed since we clearly weren't getting anywhere. It's been 2 days, and things are still tense between us. I'm unsure of where I went wrong. Am I the jerk for leaving dinner to go get my son food, even though dinner was served? You're the jerk. That was really rude, especially because they had a kid and you brought an obvious treat food into the house. If your kid is picky, bring granola bars along with you or something. And if you fail to do so, just handle it as it comes, the way your wife suggested. If your kid was going to be a monster, you could have left early and stopped at McDonald's on the way home. And your kid wasn't even complaining, and there was dessert coming. You way overreacted. Yeah, he overreacted. It was so rude to leave in the middle of a meal. What is OP teaching his son? Don't like your meal? No problem. Dad will get you McDonald's right away. OP, don't expect an invite back. Right. People don't realize that these little actions add up, and this is how we create entitled kids who think their parents are there to just get them what they want. I'll say everyone sucks here. He would have been fine skipping the meal. An egg and toast is a perfectly okay meal for a 5-year-old, and for OP to jump in his car to go get the kid something else was rude. Let's be honest. OP left during the middle of the meal because he didn't like it and wanted McDonald's for himself. Yeah, I'm going to get downvoted into oblivion, but not the jerk. Your kid wasn't throwing a fit. Manners are for making the other person comfortable. You were a guest, and frankly, I don't believe for a second he didn't have anything else in his house that he could have fed your kid. That part made me think he was trying to say his kid was more sophisticated. But when you don't allow your kid to choose between french fries and quinoa, it's not your kid being sophisticated. It's just not what you do when you invite someone over. You say, "Oh, I have fruit and cheese," and you help. He didn't help. But instead of letting your kid go hungry, you went and got food instead of everyone leaving early. I think you were the one with manners in this situation. Exactly. He's not the jerk. All the people calling him the jerk are not really seeing the full picture. His son is 5. It's completely unfair of the adults to eat in front of a toddler while he goes hungry at the dinner table because he has a preference. Everyone has food preferences. Kids are people too. The father and the kid were not provided any alternatives, so all I see is a father feeding his hungry kid without robbing someone else's cupboard. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for what he did or not? Please let us know. Making a 5-year-old eat salmon and quinoa instead of McDonald's should be a crime. Healthy, yeah, sure, but like, dude, come on, man, ain't nobody want to eat that stuff. I gave my ex's newly published book a bad online review. I've never even read it. He lied, cheated, and abandoned me with his baby over 16 years ago. Today, I found his book being sold online. There was something about seeing his name again that brought back terrible, painful memories and a desperate need for revenge. In my rage, I left a review of his book with the comment, paraphrased, "Stephen King ripoff. Skip this one if you value your free time. A complete waste of money, energy, and time. No good characters, contrived plot, terrible dialogue. I'm pretty sure an edgy, semi-illiterate teen wrote this. 1 out of 5 stars. Childish, I know, but I do feel a little better, honestly. I hope it stings him like heck. Edit to answer questions. Why not get him for child support? I've already explained child support in detail. I don't want to spend that much time, energy, and effort for what will likely amount to basically nothing. Last I heard, he's living couch to couch and refuses to work, which is consistent with how he used to act when we broke up. I don't want to waste my time when I'm already doing okay for myself and my family without him. It's simple math. The judge would only make him pay what he can afford from his paycheck. How much money does someone without a job get in their paycheck? None, because there is no paycheck. So going through the courts will result in nothing. To those who keep asking about child support, stop bothering me about it. I have addressed this in the comments multiple times. Why haven't you moved on with your life? I have. I had a random whim to seek petty revenge a whole decade and a half after he left our family. A random one-time whim doesn't mean I haven't moved on. It means I felt vengeful for a moment after being reminded of an old pain and I reacted. It's not that deep. How did you leave a review? The book was being sold digitally and I couldn't figure out how to make a review on the page itself, so I assumed it was because I wasn't a customer. I left the review elsewhere on a widely used site that can easily be accessed when searching for reviews. I need to be vague because I don't want to disclose personal information. Therefore, I won't share where the book was sold, etc. Are you sure it's him? Yes. His links were shared by family members who were promoting his books and congratulating him on becoming an author. Why are you so angry? Some people seem upset over a random post on a petty revenge subreddit. Self-awareness is quite powerful. Am I the jerk for calling my aunt uneducated? I, 26 female, have an aunt in her 50s who places very little importance on education. She barely graduated high school and passed on these views to her son as well. On the other hand, my parents raised me to believe that education is the most valuable tool in life, and I wholeheartedly agree. I graduated high school with honors, and I'm currently studying biochemistry in university. I'm living with my mom and working to save money for tuition. I work at the local seafood processing plant where my aunt also works. This job is extremely challenging for me. I work from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m., and it involves physically demanding labor. I'll admit that I'm not suited for such strenuous work, and I also have some health issues that make it even harder. However, the pay is good, so I stick with it. The other night during our break, I was experiencing a lot of back pain, so I took a muscle relaxer. It made it difficult for me to move my left arm, which my aunt didn't appreciate. She's typically cranky and bossy, so I wasn't surprised when she went on a rant about how I'll have to tough it out because this will be my life from now on, working in a factory as she believes that office jobs are rare. Normally I would ignore her, but I was so on edge that I snapped and said something along the lines of, "I will never have to get used to hard labor because I'm not as uneducated as you, so I have better options. This job doesn't require any specific education, and you don't even need to submit a resume to apply." My comment silenced her for the rest of the night. The next day, my aunt called my mom about it, and my mom told me that I need to control my temper better because my aunt is just like that. However, I don't think my aunt should get a free pass for her behavior. Edit/update. There seems to be mixed opinions on this, and that's fair enough. I was in a rush when I made this post and left out some info that may or may not be useful. My aunt has always been bossy and mean, not just towards me, but to everyone. She tends to say really nasty things to anyone without provocation, and I don't know why. I don't equate being uneducated with being stupid. I also don't believe that trade work is inferior to having a degree. Both types of education require skills. I have tailored my studies to accommodate my health problems as best as I can. I receive disability assistance on campus and make sure to have documentation on file at any job. My current job has been somewhat accommodating when I need an extra break once in a while, but the work is still physically painful. I have nerve damage, dystonia, and a slipped disc in my back that was fixed but still causes unpredictable pain. Update. I spoke with my manager about the incident since I assumed he would have known after 4 days, but to my surprise, he didn't. I explained exactly what happened and mentioned that I intentionally chose a position away from my aunt on my first day because we don't get along well. They had been wondering about that, but I didn't explain it at the time to avoid concerns about hiring me. My manager said he technically has to file a report on the incident and speak with my aunt, but considering my openness about it, I'm likely not at risk of losing my job. Will I apologize to my aunt? Absolutely not, unless my manager asks me to. She hasn't spoken to me since the incident and avoids sitting with me at lunch. Everyone sucks here. Your aunt was very rude, and to prove how much better you are than her, you stoop down to her level. Your fancy education won't mean anything if that's how you look at people. Everyone sucks here. I'm not built for hard labor. Kind of made me laugh. Not sure what her son has to do with this, but like you admit, the job pays well, so it's working out for your aunt who has a high school education. And apparently you can do it even if you are partway through university. Your aunt is wrong that doing one job means you'll do it forever, but you're wrong that having part of a university education means you'll never have to work at a job that you consider beneath you. And you're really both too old to fight like this at work. You sound like a jerk. You look down on your family and the people you work with. You see them as below you because you're so well educated compared to them. Remember, you have the same job as them, even if it is just temporary. If you think this physically demanding job is hard for you, imagine how hard it is for your 50-year-old aunt and others who find it just as hard, but they genuinely rely on it. Being humble is free. Aunt was maybe a little too condescending with you, considering you are a grown adult now, but remember to act like one if you want to be treated like one. Everyone sucks here. I know you were at the end of your rope and you lashed out, but you accomplished nothing. You haven't changed her worldview. Your best revenge will be going off and living the life you're working towards. She'll still complain behind your back, but in the end, she's not your problem. She doesn't sound like a very good person. I do have some problems with you dissing manual labor. You may not be made for it, but it puts food on the table, furniture in your home, and a multitude of other things you use every day and take for granted. When you're working in a lab, just remember that all of the equipment you use doesn't load and unload itself off of trucks. Learn to ignore her. My prematurely born son needs surgery, and my mom blew me off. I found out that my premature son will need surgery on his skull to correct a prematurely closed suture. I made the mistake of confiding in my mom that I was falling apart and asked if she could come over. She initially said yes and asked when. I told her that today would be nice, considering she doesn't work, so it wouldn't be burdensome. However, she can't come today. The reason? She needs to pick up her prescription for my dad tomorrow. But she thinks she could make it work in a couple of days, maybe sometime after 1 p.m. Y'all, I have never asked this woman for anything in my entire life, ever. And the one time I do, this is her response. Then she had the audacity to call me dramatic for being upset. She called me dramatic after I begged her multiple times to come because I was having a panic attack. I've sacrificed so much in my life to help them, and I also financially support them. I give them a substantial amount of money every month to supplement their income. I've always justified their mistreatment of me, thinking that it's okay because they would be there for me if I really needed them, even though they haven't been there before. But now, my son has to undergo surgery. On his head, where his brain is. I can't stop crying. And she can't even come because she needs to pick up prescriptions for a grown man? I told her not to bother then, and she replied, "Well, that's your choice. I'm here." No, she's not. That's the whole point. That's it. I'm cutting off contact now. I can't imagine my son ever needing me for some reason and me not being there. But for her, no reason is good enough to inconvenience her. No family is better than having a family like this one. I'm done. Edit. He was born during an emergency C-section at 34 weeks, and he had to stay in the NICU for 2 weeks. She has not seen him or me. He's almost 37 weeks gestational age, so he's still premature. Second edit. I have an incredible husband who's my rock. He and I have built our new little family, and I'm sure we can endure all challenges. It's just tough right now. Thank you all for the support. It's still difficult to accept that internet strangers care more about me than my own mom. Despite years of therapy, I don't think the pain will ever completely go away, especially in vulnerable moments like this. Clearly, you need to save all of your money for your new son. Yes, now her son is here. She will need the money she has previously given to her parents. Her kid will need a college fund, medical bills, etc. No more for the freeloaders. OP. Yup. Fortunately, my insurance through my law firm is pretty good, so we're not financially concerned. But absolutely, any money previously given to them, outside of prescription dog food for their dog, which I will order myself now for him, is now just going to go into a savings account instead. Would I be the jerk if I didn't go to my brother's wedding? I'm 32, female. My brother, who's 28, recently proposed to his girlfriend, who's 22, of 6 months. They have set their wedding date for December 13th, the same day they met, with the ceremony scheduled for 5 to 6 p.m. I have 2 concerns about this. Firstly, I live 3 hours away and work as a teacher, which means I have only 1 personal day per year. Their wedding falls right in the middle of finals for my district, and attending would require me to use all my personal time off due to the travel involved. I would have to split my time off between the 13th and the 14th. My family is pressuring me to attend, but I don't think it's fair to demand that I give up my only personal day for my brother. Let me explain why. My boyfriend of 3 years bought a house when we first got together. He switched jobs last year to work in a more supportive environment with better opportunities for advancement. However, his company is currently experiencing an unexpected slow season due to the economy, and there isn't enough work for everyone at the moment. He barely earns enough to cover expenses, and this has been the case for a few months. I'm planning to move in with him over the summer to help with bills, and I've been contributing whatever money I can spare. I had hoped for an engagement ring or a wedding next year, but some financial setbacks related to home ownership, such as the need for his new gutters and replacing malfunctioning appliances, have significantly diminished those hopes. Now, regarding my brother, since he proposed 3 weeks ago, he's been consistently rude to me about his engagement. He makes mean remarks about me being single, claims that he can find someone to marry him within 6 months, while I can't get someone to commit in 3 years, and suggests that this makes him a superior person. He also insults my ability to be a good spouse and criticizes my lack of success compared to him. Meanwhile, he and our parents are insisting that I have obligations for their wedding. They expect me, as a former florist, to create the centerpieces and bouquets free of charge. Additionally, as a jewelry maker with a small business, they want me to create custom jewelry for the bridal party. They also expect me to act as a chauffeur for our elderly grandfather, arriving early to set up, stay late to clean up, and even serve and do dishes during the reception. Given my brother's attitude, I believe I'm well within my rights to demand some changes. Specifically, I would like him to stop bullying me about my marital status and the demands they're placing on me, considering they deliberately chose a day that would be inconvenient for many people to attend. I feel they're expecting too much from me without even considering if I can make it all work, especially since I might not be able to take time off due to finals. So I think I know the answer, but I could use some insight. Would I be in the wrong if I choose to not attend my brother's wedding? Here you go. I'm sorry, but I will not be able to attend, nor help in any way. No is a complete sentence. Don't do this to yourself. Just say no. Not the jerk. Several Reddit pearls come to mind. It's an invitation, not a summons. Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Plus, your brother is a jerk. Never reward bad behavior. Am I the jerk for getting mad once I found out my package was stolen again? So about 6 months ago, we moved into a new apartment. It's a house with 3 apartments, 2 on one floor and 1 on the basement. We live in the basement, and there's a guy in the middle apartment with no one else around. We ordered some curtains and other items from Amazon and had them shipped to our house. On the day of delivery, I went up to the porch and I couldn't find the packages. I knocked on the door and the guy answered. I introduced myself, and before I could say anything about the package, he said, "I didn't steal any package." At that point, I hadn't even mentioned a package. So I simply nodded and asked if he saw anything or if his camera captured anything. He shook his head and said, "That camera doesn't work, it's just for show." I left and assumed it was a mistake or some other issue. We got our money back from Amazon and ordered again, but this time we had it shipped to my mom's house. We decided to do that until my girlfriend's daughter accidentally had a package sent to our apartment. I kept a close eye on the tracking, and as soon as I saw it was delivered, I rushed to the porch, but the package wasn't there. I felt frustrated, raked my hand through my hair, and kicked one of the house's trash cans out of frustration. I had a hunch and I looked in the trash, thinking maybe the delivery driver put it there. While I was searching, the guy came out and said, "Oh, you're looking for another package?" I closed the lid, and he literally said, "I didn't take this one either." I was on the verge of losing my temper. I went back to our apartment and was almost in tears from anger. The next day, my town's Facebook page was buzzing with activity. Someone had stolen an autistic kid's bike from in front of the local diner. The kid is well known around town, so every shop and business checked their cameras and caught the culprit. It turned out to be the guy who lives above me, the one who didn't steal my packages. So that brings us to yesterday, when I accidentally shipped something to our apartment. I didn't realize that PayPal changed the shipping address. I went up to the guy's apartment and waited for the package. He came out and stared at me, asking, "What are you doing?" "I'm waiting for a package, since I can't trust anyone on this street," I replied. "Well, I didn't steal your packages," he said. "Yeah, just like you didn't steal that bike," I muttered to myself. He got angry and told me to get off his porch. I lost control. All the anger boiled up and came out. I called him a useless jerk and said he was the worst human being in town. I was so furious that all my words came out in loud, shrill screams. He just kept repeating that he didn't steal anything. Then I went back down to the basement, feeling embarrassed. Am I the jerk for screaming at him? Not the jerk. I'd definitely contact your landlord and possibly the police to at least let them know that packages have gone missing and he's the guy who stole the bike. I'll say not the jerk, but maybe you should have just informed the Facebook page you knew the man in the picture. The absolute cheek of the man to deny taking a package without you telling him about it. I'd be tempted to order a glitter bomb package and see what he has to say. Not the jerk. He clearly knows that he's stealing. Don't feel bad for calling him out. Getting yelled at should be the least of his worries. Father's Day malicious compliance. 18 years ago, to the date, I was over at Dad's house and I needed a wrench. And coming from a long line of mechanics, I knew that he'd have one available as I didn't have my kit in my car, so I asked to borrow one. Dad, of course, said yes, handed me the mechanic's toolbox, and just out of habit, I opened it and immediately noticed that a Craftsman 7/16 ratchet end wrench was missing. Again, I come from a long line of mechanics. Every tool has its place, be it in a drawer, a box, or outlined on a pegboard, and I thought it was weird that Dad lost a wrench out of the spare house toolkit. "You're missing a 7/16, I pointed out, showing him the missing slot. Now Dad, being Dad, just had to mess with me a bit. So looking me dead in the eyes and beaming a huge smile, he responded, "It was there when I gave it to you." Mind you, I hadn't left the kitchen. I hadn't so much as shifted my feet. I knew he was lying. He knew he was lying. But it had been ingrained in me since childhood that losing a tool is horrible. Now I knew he was messing with me and I let it go. But from that day forward, anytime we needed something, he'd make a comment like, "Sure wish I had that 7/16 wrench that Coyote lost," or, "You know what would fix it? That missing 7/16 wrench." This went on for months. So one day he made the usual "tease me for losing a tool" comment, and I warned him. I looked him in the eyes and said, "Say it one more time, old man, and you're going to get that wrench every birthday, Father's Day, and Christmas for the rest of your natural life." A few hours passed. I asked him to hand me a tool, and he said, "I can't. You lost it, remember?" I laughed and played it off, but it was on, and that was 18 years ago. Today, being Father's Day, he just received his 52nd Craftsman ratchet end 7/16 wrench. Since that day, he's tried telling me he knows that I didn't lose it. I knew that already, that I don't need to buy it. Oh, yes I do. And he's occasionally tried to say it was a different size or item to get a different present, but we both know that's not happening. They're everywhere. Every coffee can, junk drawer, cabinet, toolbox, pegboard, or spare nail in the house and garage contains a Craftsman 7/16 ratchet and wrench. You know how they say you're never more than 8 feet from a spider? Well, in Dad's world, you're never more than 7 feet from a Craftsman 7/16 ratchet and wrench, because there are at least 2 in his truck at this point as well. When will it end? When the old man passes on. The last wrench will go in his cold hand so that he can tighten the bolts and heck, because I warned him. Darn it, I warned him. Happy Father's Day to all of you with weird traditions, jokes, and relationships with the man who made you who you are today. And if you need a wrench, hit me up. I know a guy. Am I the jerk for kicking my husband's friends out of the pool? I'm a working, sole income earner for the time being of 2. My husband has been struggling to find a job for 16 months. I don't know what's up with that, and so I've been solely paying for everything. As you know, it's summertime, and the kids want to go to the beach every weekend, but I'm busy working oftentimes, and my husband won't bother to take them unless he uses my car, which is a no from me because I need it for work. Anyway, so I put money towards renovating and upgrading our old pool so the kids could use it. Thing is, once the pool was ready, my husband started inviting his friends to come over and use it for hours. They'd basically taken over, preventing the kids from even using it. They complained about being denied the pool several times, which caused them to get upset. So what I did was talk to my husband about it, and I told him to limit his friends' usage of the pool. He flipped out on me, saying it's his house and his water too, and I can't control what he does or who he brings over. I got mad and in return told him that tomorrow the kids get the pool, or else I will ban his friends from it completely. He side-eyed me and said, "Fine, they can have the darn pool tomorrow." Well, the next day, my daughter calls me crying, saying Dad brought his friends over and refused to let her and her brother use the pool again. I was livid. I literally left work right then and there and came home. I saw him and his friends in the pool messing around. I just screamed my head off at them, telling them to get out. My husband tried to get involved, but I told him off and had all of his friends leave. He blew up at me for acting like a lunatic and said I was being controlling and shameless. I said I already told him to let the kids use the pool, yet he ignored my request. He yelled at me saying, "Just because I paid to fix the pool doesn't mean I own it." He then went back inside and started calling his friends one by one to apologize on my behalf, since he said I was too shameless to do it myself. He then left the house and hasn't been back yet. Edit. 1. I paid for the pool to get renovated and upgraded. 2. He and his friends are always there using it, giving me and the kids no chance to spend some time in it. 3. He and his friends trash the pool every single time. They drop food and drinks, and I end up having to clean it myself. He left the house and hasn't been back yet? Good. You're not the jerk. Yeah, I'd be looking at divorce lawyers over this. 16 months unemployed, trashing the home with his buddies, being a jerk to the kids, and turning it all into a blowout power struggle with his wife when she objects? What, if anything, does this man bring to a marriage that would make this relationship worth saving? Not the jerk. It would be one thing if he enjoyed the pool with his pals now and again, but your husband has no job, and if he's messing around in the pool this much, then the kids can't even use it. He's definitely a jerk with a sniff of deadbeat about him. He's being an awful dad too by hogging the family pool, which sounds like he barely contributed anything towards, so the kids are literally crying for not being able to use it. What a jerk your spouse is. Tell him to get a darn job ASAP. My husband's parents took out credit cards in his name. My husband ran a credit report and found out that his credit score was 450. Needless to say, we were shocked. We had no idea how his credit score had gotten so low. We looked at the details, and lo and behold, 13 credit cards had been taken out in his name with debts that amounted to $10,000 by, you guessed it, mother-in-law. He called mother-in-law on the phone, and she admitted to taking out the credit cards in his name and racking up the debt. I don't even know what else to type because I'm literally floored. I have no idea what to do, think, say, anything. I feel so bad and just like I need so much help. Update. So we found out that they've been doing this for the past 6 years. They're only making the minimum payments on them. He was able to get access to the accounts online because his mom uses the same password for everything. The accounts were being paid from their bank account. The credit cards had been used for things like gas, gifts, phone bills, hospital bills, Etsy, etc. Let me start this off by saying his dad makes about $100,000 a year, but they live well above their means. We confronted his parents on the phone, and they admitted that they took out the credit cards in his name. They said they didn't have enough money to pay all of the credit cards back right now, but they would start paying $800 a month on them starting in October instead of the minimum that they were doing before, $26 per month per card. Husband doesn't want his parents to go to jail for identity theft, but I don't feel comfortable being at their mercy regarding whether or not they pay. We're also worried that we might not have enough evidence or that they could just say that all of the credit cards were his or that he knew about them. Husband really doesn't want to take them to court, but I'm not sure what options we have. I feel like it might be important to note that his parents don't like us and never want to speak to us again, so we don't really have any reason to trust what they're saying, except for the fact that they've been paying on them for 6 years. I'm really just looking for advice on what different options we have, what those would entail, whether or not we would have to file criminal charges to get the money from them, etc. Edit. Husband's parents still have his social security number memorized and even pulled up a credit report on their own in his name last night. Is there anything we can do about this? Husband suggested legally changing his name, but I'm not sure that would work. The only options you have are to agree to allow your husband's parents to pay down the debt at a pace that they can, or you have to file a police report for identity theft and sue in small claims court for the financial ramifications. You have no other options here. It will not be easy for them to get out of this, but it will be fairly easy for you to show that you never took these credit cards out, and they are the ones who have used them. Update. After we found out about what was going on, we called his parents to see what they would have to say, and it really hit the fan. I probably shouldn't have talked to them at all, because at that point I was fuming, but we really felt like we needed some answers to what was going on. I will admit that I yelled at them and said some very not nice, a bit of an understatement, things on the phone. We started the conversation talking about the debt, and we barely said 3 sentences about it before they turned the whole thing around. The conversation went on for 30 minutes, halfway through which husband had a panic attack, and only about 2 minutes actually consisted of them talking about the fact that they had racked up all of the debt and stolen his identity. I'll add some of the highlights of the conversation. The money is not the issue. The real issue is your wife. Ever since you married Batman, no one wants to be around you. If she was a good wife, she would want you to be around your family. She's a bad wife because she's filling your head with lies about us. At this point, I mentioned how they were mistreating us with the words they were saying. What? You're making that up. Where did you get that from? You're crazy. You will not be able to go to your grandparents' funerals because of your wife. His grandparents are in great health, by the way. Your mother has done nothing but love you, and she gets treated this way? They went on and on for 30 minutes, during which I'll admit that I yelled at them quite a bit and lost my temper, mostly because I was mad that all they were doing was talking about me and not the fact that they stole his identity. I ended the conversation by saying, we just need to know a few things. 1. Did you take out the credit cards? Yes. 2. Are you going to pay them back? Yes. How are you going to do that? My car gets paid off in October, so I'll pay $800 a month starting then. Husband really doesn't want to press charges against them, but I have no reason to believe that they will pay the money back, except for the fact that they said they would. One big thing that I'm worried about is that last night they pulled up a credit report for husband on their own, meaning they have all of the access to his financial information at their fingertips and they're willing to use it. This whole thing just feels like I'm living in a nightmare. Edit to add. Husband and I are filing a police report for identity theft. I think the thing some of you said really got through to him. We're filing the police report when he gets off work, then going to the bank to change accounts to one that she does not know and getting him a new phone number. We are 100% no contact with them and letting the police deal with it now. I'm hoping that husband stays true to his word, and I have faith that he will. At this point, I'm terrified that they're going to do something to us after they've found out that we've gone to the police. I feel like I don't know what they're capable of anymore. I'm really just scared. Update. I'm really starting to wonder if we're doing the right thing. We went to the police station last night and filed a police report. It was honestly just awful. The officer kept talking to us, trying to talk us out of it, saying that if we did it, his mother would be going to prison. This isn't a direct quote, but he said something like, "This isn't just a tool to get this stuff off of your record. This will put criminal charges against her." Husband and I kind of just looked at each other, but in the end, we went through with the police report. I felt nothing but sick since we found out about all of this. Now I'm starting to feel like we shouldn't have gone through with the police report. His parents are texting him, saying that they have the money and that they're going to pay back all of the accounts now, and that if we go through with the charges, they're going to prison and they're losing their jobs. I don't even know if we could retract the police report if we wanted to. I know that this identity theft case is going to be a huge stressor in our lives and connect us to his parents even longer. I'm sure they're going to try to say that my husband knew about the accounts and that he gave them permission, and I'm starting to worry that people will listen to them. We called the credit card companies to report the fraud, and they told us the charges, and a lot of them were things that were gifts to my husband, along with bills and other things. I'm worried that because husband benefited from the fraud because his parents bought things for him, They will use that in court against us and say that husband knew and gave them permission. One of the charges was for tires for husband's car that they gifted to him. He dropped the car off at the dealer and picked it up. His mom went in to pay, but he was the one who dropped it off. I'm just so worried that they're going to lie to turn this against husband and that someone will believe them. We really don't have much proof except what's on the cards and that they were the ones making the payments. We live in a state where we can't record phone conversations, so we can't try to get them to admit it. I'm starting to regret all of this. I wish we could just go back to Saturday when we had no idea about any of it and we were happy. I'm feeling so miserable and depressed and I can't get out of this funk. We absolutely cannot afford to go to therapy right now in case husband gets put on the hook for all of these charges, but I don't know what to do to make either of us feel better. Update. It's been about 8 months since my last update. A lot has happened since then, and I felt like those of you who helped me out deserved an update. Since then, we've done a lot of fighting with the in-laws. We decided against filing charges and instead hired a lawyer. The lawyer wrote up some legal documents I don't understand, which basically stated that they had until March 2017 to pay off the debt, plus the fees for our lawyer. They agreed to it, probably because they didn't want to go to jail and thought that they could still salvage a relationship with their son. Since then, they have paid back all of the money, most of it with large sums of money, which makes me wonder why they needed the cards in the first place, and my husband's credit has increased quite a bit. My husband made the decision that he no longer wanted a relationship with his parents, which I supported him with wholeheartedly. Our decision was to never see or speak to his family again, but when my husband's niece passed, their granddaughter, we felt as though we should at least go to the funeral. We saw them there, and they started acting like nothing had happened and that everything was okay. We let them have their moment due to what had happened. They have invited us to various holidays since then, but we have not responded. We haven't seen them since the funeral and don't plan on seeing them again. I'm not sure what my husband would decide to do in the event of another funeral, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I want to thank everyone for all your support and helping me and my husband get through one of the most difficult times of our lives. Everything is exponentially better now, and I'm so happy that we decided to go no contact. 10 for 10, would do again. Am I the jerk for demanding my coworker pay me for a ride to work after many months of giving her a free ride? For the last 14 months, I've been driving one of my coworkers to and from work. She lives only a mile up the road from me, and it's convenient since it's on my way, so I've never asked her for money or accepted it when offered. From my perspective, I would be going there regardless, and her overall household expenses are higher than mine, so it felt like the right thing to do. Over the weekend, my car went to the shop. I informed my coworker that I wouldn't be available to give her a ride on Monday or Tuesday. She said it wasn't a problem because her boyfriend is off this week and would give her a ride. I asked if I could also catch a ride with them and even offered to walk to her home so they wouldn't have to drive out of their way. She consulted with her boyfriend and he agreed, but requested $20 for the 2 days. I understand it's just $20, but that request bothered me. I declined the offer and mentioned that I would find my own transportation. At work yesterday, she inquired about my car. I informed her that I would be getting my car back on Tuesday night, but going forward, if she wanted to ride with me, I would appreciate $30 a week, which covers about a third of my gas costs. She was upset by this and mentioned that her boyfriend had asked for money from me because having me in the car meant he couldn't make any stops on the way home. I pointed out that I had been willing to drive straight home to help her out for over a year, and it wouldn't have hurt him to show some level of appreciation. Today, she informed me that she would no longer be riding with me after discussing it with her boyfriend. She expressed disappointment with me for holding his actions against her and accused me of being petty. A couple of other coworkers mentioned throughout the day that her boyfriend is simply unpleasant and that she doesn't have much say at home, but overall, they agreed with me that his behavior was inconsiderate. From my perspective, this guy directly benefits from me by not having to worry about transportation for his girlfriend or spending any money on travel, and my coworker should have stood up for me. Do you think I'm being petty about this? Petty? Yes. Jerk? No. While she can blame her boyfriend, she went along with it. She should have explained to him how for over a year you gave her free rides and asking for money was tacky of him. But she didn't. She just went along with it. She showed you what she thought of your kindness and friendship. You're just showing her the same. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. She's a package deal with her boyfriend. You were doing her a favor for quite some time, and you're right that she should have defended you against her boyfriend. Heck, she could even pay him those $20 for you. How come she was upset only after you wanted money from her and not when her boyfriend asked for money from you, if in her book it's okay to ask for money? Your offer of 1/3 of the cost was pretty generous. She had free rides. She tanked the possibility for herself over a measly $20, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Today I messed up by losing my job, $4,000 in inventory. I'm 16 and I've been working as a cashier at a nearby supermarket for the past 6 months, so I'm still relatively new to some things. During the peak of our rush hour yesterday afternoon, 2 women arrived at the front of my line with carts full of expensive merchandise. Right from the start, I noticed that they were very talkative as I scanned their items, asking me numerous questions about myself, my life, and my job. It almost felt like a distraction. At the time, I didn't find it too strange since customers often strike up conversations like that. They shared details about their lives as traveling nurses, and one of them mentioned having worked as a cashier at a similar place to where I work. The first woman's total came to around $2,600, all for items like baby monitors, a pump, and other baby supplies. I was taken aback by the amount because I hadn't realized how quickly it had added up. It was the first time I had seen a purchase of this magnitude. Now, here's where it gets interesting. At the end of the first woman's total, she showed me a store credit card with instructions on the back that read, "Insert card, then select cash tender." I started feeling suspicious at this point, but the card looked very real, so I allowed it. She was also quite convincing, explaining how the card worked and that it was a privilege earned by people with excellent credit. So I followed her instructions. I pressed the button indicating that she paid in cash, handed her the receipt, and then it was the next woman's turn. She also had a similar cart filled with items totaling around $1,300. I admit by that point I should have caught on, and to be honest, I feel like an idiot. She handed me a card identical to her friend's with the same instructions to select cash. I pressed the same button, but since they didn't actually give me any cash, I didn't put anything in the register. It wasn't until later in the day that I discovered neither of their cards worked because I hadn't pressed card tender on the machine. Their act of inserting the cards was a simple trick, so off they went with all that merchandise in their carts, a receipt in hand, and not a single dollar spent. About half an hour later, I consulted my manager and was informed that it was definitely a scam. Honestly, I'm still shocked that I fell for it so badly. They knew exactly how to respond to every question, having a ready-made explanation for each item. They even mentioned a baby shower in relation to some of the items, although I don't recall all of their excuses. It was very well put together, I must admit. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs earlier, but the pressure from the long line of customers behind them got to me. I fell for the change scam once. Guy handed me a $100 bill for a small purchase, talking to me while I'm counting out his change, leaves and comes back asking if he can switch it out as he wants to keep the $100 bill. Got me just the right kind of confused that he got the $80 change and the original $100 bill back, and I didn't even notice anything wrong until I went to count the drawer later. Manager wasn't mad at me, but just found it on the camera and showed me what happened so I knew what to look for next time. Really surreal seeing myself do that without realizing anything wrong. I, 32 female, purposefully ignored what my husband told me he wanted for Father's Day. Now he's ignoring me. My husband and I have been together for the past 9 years, and we have 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. On Mother's Day, all I wanted was a day to myself. I asked my husband to take the kids out somewhere so I could have some time alone to relax. Instead, he surprised me and the kids with tickets for a fun day out. We had a great time and the kids enjoyed it, but it bothered me that he gave me the opposite of what I had asked for. For Father's Day, my husband wanted a day to himself to stay home and play video games. He often games with his friends, spending a few hours in his office after work. So instead of giving him a free day, I got him and the kids cards for an arcade an hour away, with plenty of tokens. I gave him the cards during dinner on Saturday so they could leave early and spend the whole day playing together. I got my desired free day, and my husband and the kids made lasting memories. However, after the kids went to bed, my husband and I got into a fight. He was upset that I disregarded his wish for Father's Day, while I was angry that he didn't realize he had done the same thing to me on Mother's Day. Since then, he has been ignoring me and not accepting my apologies. Edit. Some people seem to think that my husband, kids, and I went out together on Mother's Day. However, that's not the case. I took the kids out for a day out while he spent the entire day playing video games with his friends. Edit. I can't believe I have to clarify this, but I don't resent my kids. My point was not that spending a day out with them is terrible and that I don't want to do it. My point was that it's disappointing when you ask for one thing and receive the opposite. Based on your edit, it sounds like you each got your gifts, just on the other's holiday. If he really can't see how these things are the same, I suggest you speak in smaller words and try again, because he's being deliberately obtuse. He expected to have a day off on Mother's Day and another on Father's Day, and is being a petty kid that he didn't get both days off. Make a graph and chart which days each of you has off. When you're alone with him, hold it up, tell him to explain how it's different, with facts and logic. Ask if the difference was that he was happy on Mother's Day and unhappy on Father's Day. Once you're able to get him talking, you're also going to have to discuss how it's not appropriate to give your spouse the silent treatment, on top of the not coolness of him acting like he's the only human being with feelings that matter in your marriage. There's no way he didn't know what he was doing when he set up a day with you and the kids on Mother's Day without him around. Or I guess maybe he's legitimately insane. I feel crazy reading these comments accusing you of resenting your kids or being a bad wife for being petty. Like, yeah, it was petty. People get petty when they're mistreated and taken advantage of. And now he's lying to you and saying it's not the same and not what he was trying to do. Please. Any husband with half a brain knows that Mother's Day is a holiday the father/husband participates in actively, not just planning or buying, but is present with you, with the kids, trying to give you time off. It's what he wanted for Father's Day. He knew it's what you wanted for Mother's Day. Yeah, it was petty. I would be petty too if my partner got me an obligation and got themselves a day of rest. You two need to talk it out, but he needs to own up to what he did. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend her home decor is the reason I won't host a work gathering at her place? I, male 32, have been with my girlfriend, who's 29, for over a year now. She's smart, funny, a bit quirky, and has a serious job with a good salary. We have a great time together and generally get along very well. The only thing is her choice in home decor is bizarre, to put it frankly, and not something you would think a normal, grown adult would be into. Her apartment is definitely a reflection of herself and her interests, but not in the best way. My girlfriend has a wall dedicated to animation in one room of her apartment, with Futurama pieces and etchings of some weird triangle guy. Then there's the wall of framed and preserved insects in another room. But not insects like butterflies or moths. Instead, she displays tarantulas, beetles, and large stick insects. Her bathroom has a subtle theme of the ocean, which is pretty common, but instead of starfish or shells, she has a little anglerfish nightlight, a small vampire squid painting, and a framed diagram of what apparently is a goblin shark right by the toilet. I would say a majority of her home decor and furnishings are okay. The apartment itself is very modern and sleek. It's just the random decor and juvenile-ish themes like cartoons, insects, and bizarre ocean creatures that are off-putting. This is where I might be the jerk. I avoid bringing people over to her place, especially people from my job, because of how juvenile it looks. Everyone's impressed when they see the high-rise, but that quickly fades once you enter. The one time I brought a work colleague over, they ended up telling me afterward that they found her insect wall terrifying. I work in finance, and appearances and first impressions are important. My office holds casual gatherings where we get together for a few drinks and good food, and we rotate hosts. This time, it's my turn. The problem is, my place is under some construction and not an ideal place to be right now, so I've been staying with my girlfriend. She suggested that we host my colleagues here since she has the space and thinks it'll be fun. I told her I planned on skipping my rotation and seeing if the next person would be okay with hosting early. She kept pressing on why I didn't want them over here, so I finally said it's because her home decor is strange and not something a grown woman should have, and also that her insect wall horrified the one colleague that did come over. My girlfriend got mad and said that at the end of the day, it's not my space, and these things bring her joy. She also said that she is indeed an adult, which is exactly why her apartment is decorated in such a manner. I love my girlfriend, I do, and it's okay to have different interests, but does an adult really need to decorate with them besides a few things here and there? I mean, my own mother was confused after she saw the entire apartment for the first time. So Reddit, am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend her home decor is the reason I won't host a work gathering in her place? You're the jerk. So you don't like her interests? You don't have to be judgmental about it. Your one and only experience bringing someone over, they were terrified of the insect display. So this one person and your own distaste has convinced you that everyone would be terrified? You don't need to bring your work colleagues over, but if you yourself look down on your girlfriend because of her interests and how she chooses to decorate, maybe you shouldn't be with her. Yeah, you don't really love her. If you did, you would rejoice in these fantastic examples of her quirkiness. She sounds great. You're the jerk because you're pretending to love this woman, but you secretly look down on her and feel superior. Break up with her and let her find someone who will cherish her awesomeness. I can't stand people who gatekeep adulthood. They're stuffy and boring and have no sense of whimsy. Why do people have to give up the stuff they enjoy just because they reach an arbitrary age that makes them an adult? That's BS. Love what you love and celebrate it until the day you pass. Loss prevention wants us to put in service calls. I work for a printing company, and as I tell a lot of people, much of my job is literally malicious compliance. People wanting things printed despite how they look, spelling and design errors, and just being plain ugly. This is another story that's come up these past 2 weeks. A while ago, one of our other locations absolutely destroyed one of their printers. Toner everywhere. The finisher unit was a hunk of plastic and metal. I genuinely don't know what they did to the machine, but it was FUBAR based on the photo, especially since the toner cartridge is not in the finisher unit. An investigation took place, and it was discovered that rather than calling in printer technicians to repair the machines, some of the company employees were repairing them instead. A company-wide message went out, essentially telling everyone not to repair or perform maintenance on the machine ourselves. Genuinely common sense things that had to be put on paper because someone did something stupid. We were always supposed to put in service calls to the techs to come take care of the machines, or we will be brought to HR. 3 months later, last week, 2 guys from loss prevention, who we'll call Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, came in to do a regular check-in. Everything was going great until I needed to change the paper in one of the printers. Tweedledum approached me and basically began raking me over the coals, saying that only technicians can open the machines. Of course, I'm dumbfounded because all I'm doing is changing the paper, but I just shrug and say, sorry, won't happen again. Well, the next day I was brought into a meeting with HR over a video call, basically wagging their finger at me. My boss, D, took the fall for me and said he was the one who told me to change the paper, so I got off scot-free and D only got a slap on the wrist. However, as a result of this, the whole facility went into malicious compliance mode after that meeting. Need to change out the paper trays? Service call. Paper jam? Better put in a service call. Need to change the toner? That's a service call. Our output of jobs last week was absolutely in the toilet. Machines were down for nearly 90% of the shifts. The techs were having a field day, however, as they got paid per call they took. While our backlog is through the roof, we were able to make our point eventually. I'm not sure exactly what had been happening in the background, but today I received a handwritten apology from Tweedledum and Tweedledummer with a $50 Visa gift card, saying they didn't understand what our job required when they reprimanded me and referred me to HR. We're back at full capacity now and have a huge backlog to catch up on. I'm hoping in addition to this gift card, I can also get in some approved overtime for some extra spending money for an upcoming trip that I have planned. The company I work for may be dim at times, but at least they often admit when they make a mistake. My annoying girlfriend records us eating dinner to post on social media. My girlfriend, who's 33, and I, 26 male, have been together for about 2 months. I'll give it a bit of backstory. My girlfriend is an absolute gym shark and has a pretty good fit as she works out really early in the morning every day. She also records these workouts and posts them on her social media. She has a whopping amount of followers for being a relatively normal person, meaning she's not a celebrity. About 130,000 followers to be exact. Most of her videos are usually thirsty guys complimenting her, but I bite my tongue because she's with me. She also records lots of videos with me and takes lots of pictures with me and posts them on her social media too. She loves making dancing videos with me too, which I fail at horribly. Now back to the story. We went to a pretty nice restaurant and she started taking videos and pictures of me and the food. I didn't mind, but it was getting annoying, so I told her to put her phone away. She said no, and when our entrees got to the table, she started recording live. I told her quietly to turn it off as I didn't want to be eating in front of people live. She laughed, thinking I was joking, and I said I was serious. She scoffed and said no. I put her phone with the camera facing down and told her that I didn't like being recorded while eating and told her it was annoying. She said she didn't care and told me it's her social media and she can do whatever she wants. I got frustrated and told her that it's annoying and that nobody cares what she's eating. She argued with me that it wasn't true and showed me how many views she had. I told her it was just a bunch of thirsty guys. She said that wasn't true and ignored me. She decided to just record herself eating, and we finished dinner without talking and she was pretty upset. I think I took it too far, but she was being annoying. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Sure, it may be just her social media, but the relationship belongs to both of you. If she can't even be present with you and is instead looking at everything as a potential viral video, that isn't fair to either of you or the health of the relationship. I'm not usually one for ultimatums, but this situation may just call for one. You're the jerk. You sound really insecure. Thirsty guys? What? So you think she can't have actual fans just because she's attractive? Plenty of guys would give anything to be with a fitness celebrity, which is pretty much what your girlfriend is at this point. And instead of encouraging her and being supportive, you let your own insecurities get in the way and you're trying to hold her back. I hope she finds a guy who is secure in himself and who supports her. You should really stop being so controlling. You totally give me creeper vibes like my ex did. He didn't even want me going to the movies with a guy friend because he was so insecure. Like, look, dude, I don't care what kind of issues you have from your past, but there's no way I'm letting you take it out on me. So yeah, I'm not proud of it, but in the end, I did cheat on him just to hurt him. That's what happens when you're an insecure little guy wasting the time of a grown woman like me. Take me as I am, or you'll miss me when I'm gone. Don't mess with an engineer. I worked for a company that provides specialized equipment used in manufacturing. To protect my anonymity, I'll have to be vague about what exactly this machine does. During my time working in this field, I got to know many clients who would need these machines installed and serviced. One of these customers we'll call Jake. I later left the company for a different job, but Jake apparently kept my number. One afternoon, I got a call from Jake that they wanted a new unit installed and another unit needed maintenance and wanted to know if I was available. I let him know that I left the company, but that I could pass him on to someone who could help. He tells me he'll pay me 2 times my current rate to install the unit over the weekend. He lets me know that the company has increased the rates of installation and the company just can't afford it. The instructions they sent over just aren't clear enough and their engineers are scratching their heads trying to figure it out. He begs me to consider it and I agree. For more context, installing this unit can take a good few hours or up to a day on your own. The company gives you 2 options. You can either pay for an engineer to come and install it, or you can save money and they will send instructions so the customer's own engineer can install it. The instructions aren't easy to follow, and it's company policy that if someone has started to install the equipment, the supplier wouldn't get involved since they couldn't verify that any of the pieces were broken. This will be important later. I drive down on the weekend and they show me the boxes of equipment. I set to work and I make good progress installing the unit. Around 6 hours in and I'm stopped by Jake who greets me. I let him know I'm nearly finished and he tells me, "Sorry, but they just don't have the budget to pay you." He understands my frustration, but his engineers can take it from here. To say I was frustrated was an understatement. I wanted revenge. There's a small button inside the unit that changes the unit into test mode. This is done to perform maintenance on the unit, but it's impossible to configure the unit with the button pressed. It's only possible to reach this button using a pin, so it's not easily pressed during installation. Because of this, the installation instructions don't mention it. There's really no way of telling the equipment is in test mode, it just won't work normally. I think you can guess where this is going. I click the button, collect my things, and leave. Monday morning, I get a call from Jake. I declined. I knew my old company wouldn't get involved since I already started installing the unit. I knew his engineers would never figure it out. I just had to let him stew. A few days later, with many missed calls, I finally pick up. Jake is furious. He asks me where the heck I've been and why I haven't been picking up my phone. He tells me they can't figure it out how to configure the machine and they need my help. I tell him, "Why is this my problem? You won't pay me." He told me he was sorry and they would work something out if I could get there as soon as possible. I told him, "Oh no, you're going to pay me 7,000 pounds up front before I do anything." I'd never felt this powerful before. He screamed at me for a bit and hung up. He called back a day later after saying that he's sorry for how he acted and said that if I could come fix it, he would pay me, in a totally defeated tone. He tried to fight it, saying he'll pay me when I was done, but I was having none of it. After a bit of back and forth, he agrees to pay me. The money hit my account and I came in the next day. The look of confusion over his face when I took out a pin and changed the unit from test mode was priceless. It was even more priceless seeing his reaction to me packing up my tools and leaving after only 20 minutes of configuring. Easiest 7,000 pounds I'd ever made. Don't try to mess with a professional problem solver. I caught my Karen sister trying to steal from me. I, 27 female, and my sister, 30 female, have a really strained relationship. I'm very low contact with her, and she only contacts me either to get money or to ask me to buy stuff for her kids. Me and my husband are very well off and we own a business together. So over time, with some of my fun money, I've bought designer handbags, and soon enough, I had a collection. So when we bought our house, I made a space in my closet to keep all of them in. Now, recently, me and my husband just announced our pregnancy, and we threw a party, so we messaged family to come over and celebrate with us. My sister came, and she looked around a lot for some reason, so since I was suspicious, I made sure to watch her moves. Soon, she started making her way upstairs, and I told my husband to tell people that I was using the bathroom, and I signaled him, showing him my sister going upstairs. So I went to go see what she was doing, and I tried to lay low about it. I saw her look around a few rooms, then she went into my room, and she found my handbag collection and looked around a bit, and took 3 and stuffed them in her duffel bag. I forgot to mention, but I should have been suspicious by how awkwardly big it was, but I assumed it was for her 2 kids' stuff. She took like 3 of them, which were really expensive ones, my Birkin, Chanel, and Dior bags. I screamed, "What do you think you're doing?" And she dropped the bag and starts saying, "Why are you following me?" And I tell her clearly, "Because you're trying to steal my bags." And she just starts saying how I don't need all these bags and I shouldn't be so selfish. I told her I'd be happy to give her my old bags, but not these because I enjoy collecting them. I'm sorry if I sound snobby. Soon enough, she goes down the stairs crying unnecessarily loud, and so a few people follow her, asking what's wrong, and she said basically the whole thing that happened upstairs, and they all started scolding her. But my mom and dad are taking her side, and it really hurt me. So now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk. Not the jerk. Might be a good idea to install cameras though, and obviously do not invite your sister over anymore. You caught theft. Good for you for acting on instinct. If she does this again, please escalate this to the police. Doesn't matter if she's your sister. Not the jerk. I broke my son and his girlfriend up, and he doesn't even know it was me. I, female 49, broke my son and his girlfriend up. They had been dating for almost a year and seemed very happy. For backstory, my son, who's 19, moved out pretty soon after his biological father passed. He told me he wanted to expand on life because he was nervous he would waste it away being depressed over the passing of someone so important to him. I understood completely and allowed him space and freedom. But we talked daily and he visited all the time. After a while of living alone, he moved back. It was around this time that he introduced me to Kaylee, fake name. Me and Kaylee got along immediately. She lacked a mother in her life, and I think she was quick to establish that relationship with me. Off the bat, I noticed she was extremely paranoid and had extreme trust issues, but she wasn't toxic or manipulative, just anxious about where my son was going after work. She'd ask me, and I'd answer with, "He went to his friend Mike's house. They hang out to play PlayStation with each other." We both genuinely believed that my son was at Mike's house, and we had no reason to suspect he wasn't. One night after my son came home to pick up his PS4 to hang out with Mike, Kaylee asked me to pick up some tampons and Tylenol for her. She lived close, and her periods were always super intense, so I was used to going out late into the night to help her. My son gets out of work at 4 and is usually home or at Kaylee's place by 5:30, 6 at the latest. It was 6 and he hadn't swung by to drop off his PS4, so I shot him a text before I left the house to let him know why I was gone. It was something like, "Hey, Kaylee is on her period, so I'm heading out to grab supplies. You okay?" He answered me while I was driving, and I checked it when I got to the store. It was something like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Mike needed help building a shelf he bought, so I'm staying a little later." I sent back some messages saying okay, be safe, all of that mother stuff. But I was not ready to see Mike working the cash register, smiling at me as soon as I walked in. I hadn't forgotten he worked here, but obviously figured it was his day off. I smiled back, but immediately I felt sick to my stomach. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he means he's building it for Mike while he works. I couldn't even think straight. I just got the tampons, some snacks, and Tylenol for Kaylee and went to the register. Mike obviously started small talk with me, paraphrasing because my memory is bad, but it went something like this. "Hi, Mrs. OP. Hello, Mike. How are you doing?" "I'm all right, getting some supplies for my son's girlfriend." I remember he laughed. "Speaking of your son, I haven't seen him in a few weeks. I need him to return my PS4 controller that he borrowed. Can you tell him that?" I felt sick again. I didn't want to put my son on the spotlight, so I didn't mention the stories my son had been feeding me. I just smiled and said, "I'll let him know." I paid for my stuff and I left quickly. I drove to Kaylee's house and gave her the supplies, but I didn't know what to say or how to say it. She was smiling and laughing and looked carefree. She asked me where my son was. I couldn't lie to her. I couldn't. So I answered honestly, I don't know. I didn't know where he was or who he was with. I just told her to call him and ask. She thanked me and I left her house. Later that night, at around 8 p.m., my son finally came home. I didn't say much to him, Just asked him if he had fun. He said yeah and went to his room. I knew I had to tell Kaylee. Soon after, I went into my room and I called her. I informed her of what Mike had said and how late he had gotten home. She told me that he said he was home hours ago, just tired so he wasn't going to visit. I could tell she was crying and I asked her if she wanted me to come over. I went to her house and we talked about everything, and she told me she didn't want anything to do with him and wanted to break up with him immediately. I told her she could, and if she wanted, we could be honest and say I told her. After I comforted her for a few hours, she asked if she could still contact me, even if she wasn't with my son. I said yes, but honestly, I'm hesitant about it. I love her, but it feels off to me. I would still help her though. Fast forward a few days, and my son comes crying to me that Kaylee broke up with him and isn't giving him any reason. I, of course, comfort him too. He said that she needed time to think about it and would tell him why when she knows what to say. But for now, she is supposedly speechless. I was too, so I don't blame her. He cried for hours in his room and in my arms, and regardless of what he did, of what I did, I comforted him. I want to tell him what I know, and I feel bad that he doesn't know. But Kaylee didn't tell him anything yet, so I might wait. Honestly, I feel so stuck. This isn't about cheating, even though I think he is. This is about trust and how he's lying to me and his girlfriend. We both know there is a possibility he isn't cheating, but he shouldn't have to lie if he has nothing to hide. I just want to add a few things. I agree I should have spoken to my son about it first, but I was too emotional and I felt betrayed. I won't disclose anything, but my son is probably mentally ill, and I've tried to get him therapy his whole life, but we ran into so many issues such as money and him not enjoying his therapist. I'm going to discuss therapy now that I am financially stable, and I can support him in that. The next update will be the last. I appreciate everyone who's commented on this. Lastly, I'm not okay with my son cheating. I may have worded it wrong, but that's because I'm biting my tongue when it comes to expressing how mad, sad, and just grossed out I am. I truly don't think he realizes how much this hurts people, and I want him to be into therapy for that too. Since he was little, he's always hurt people's feelings and never understood how it could have hurt them. I will absolutely stay in Kaylee's life. I just hope that it won't cause any drama moving forward, and I hope my son has an explanation for his behavior. I'll make an update sometime within the following days, but so far all I found out is that my son has sometimes ignored Kaylee for days on end with no explanation, and I haven't heard of it because she's a nervous person who avoids conflict. He also wants to invite a girl over for dinner tonight, which he never does ever, and I find it suspicious, but I'm hoping it's his friends. As for the lying, I have messaged Mike in hopes that he knows something about my son. Alright, you're a terrible mother for trading in loving your son for loving his girlfriend. You have no idea what your son is doing in that time. You have no idea what he's hiding from you or her. You made your own conclusions, and instead of mothering your son, you went and tattletaled on him to his girlfriend behind his back, and you're now keeping it a secret from him. No wonder your son is sneaky and manipulative. He learned it from his controlling mother. I know you probably mean well, but this behavior is disgusting, and you need to self-reflect. Update. My son told me the truth today after him and his girlfriend spoke. He was indeed seeing another woman, and I told him if he was unhappy, he shouldn't cheat. I'm not trading in my son, but this woman was planning on getting off the pill and selling her soul for my son, and I wasn't going to allow her to build her relationship off of a lie. My son and I spoke, and he told me her trust issues and whatnot were too much for him, and I told him I understand. His biological dad cheated on me, and I don't bring it up to him since he passed, but I will not allow a woman to get pregnant and live a life built on lies. He told me he was still in love with her, and he only cheated on her because it was that time of the month, and he only cheats on her once a month. Kaylee decided to give me a call. She talked things out with her sister and decided to ask him. Apparently, he was cheating, but gave her the same excuse he gave me. He said that he's only done it 3 other times. She called me and told me before my son told me, but in his defense, he was busy explaining things to his girlfriend, and now Mike, who he accidentally wrapped into this. It's only 12 in the afternoon, and he wants to tell me in detail after work, which I told him was okay. He told me he was sorry for lying, and I told him it was okay, but it did hurt my feelings. I didn't mention this in the post, or to him. His biological father cheated on me before I was pregnant with my son and for the first year of our marriage. I did not want my son to think that was okay. I talked to Kaylee, and she's just head over heels for my son, and said if he promises not to do it again, she would stay with him. I haven't told him that because it's not my business. They can talk about it. My son has sent a few messages since, but he seems extremely sorry. I am a bit disappointed in him, but I think it's because of what I went through and how hard being a single mother was after the man you thought you loved just left. Kaylee said that she would try to be a more attentive girlfriend, which honestly sucks to hear because this isn't her fault. I'm not going to dictate their relationship and tell her to find someone else, but it does shock me that she can forgive him. As much as I want to be mad at my son, I really can't. I've never gotten mad at him before, and I think this situation just brought me back to everything that happened when he was little. I hope my son can learn from this. Tonight when we talk, I'm going to be a little stricter on him, obviously. But again, he's an adult. If he decides he's going to cheat on her, I can't stop him. I really do hope that he learns. So, who was the girl he wanted to bring around? An old friend from high school. He told me they talked a lot and really connected and wanted to be friends with benefits. Apparently, he wanted to explore his options, but he says that he's in love with Kaylee, so I'm not sure what he's going to do. Am I the jerk for telling a friend I don't want her to join my date and I for dinner? I, 26 female, have a friend, 25 female, who I met in college, and although losing touch for a bit after college, I moved to the same town as her 6 months ago for work, and we've hung out quite a bit since then. I have kind of integrated into her friend group, 5 other girls, not including us, although I'm not as close with them as they are with each other, which makes sense, seeing how they've known each other for so long. I was recently on a first date with a woman I've liked for a bit. She's 27 also. We were having coffee at a cafe, and all of a sudden my friend walks up to us and says hi. Not a big deal. I know she comes here a lot, and I introduced them. My friend is super nice to my date. At this point, I hadn't told my friend that this was a date. She knows I've dated women in the past, but I wasn't expecting her to realize this was a date because it could very well have just been a friend. Then she asks if she can join us and starts to pull up a chair. My date is visibly thrown off by this, as am I, and so I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but date's name and I are on a date right now. I'll see you later though." My friend says, "Oh, I don't mind," and sits down. I reiterate more clearly, "I'd love to hang out another time, but right now I'd like for it to just be my date and I." She says okay and leaves. I thought that was the end of it. Not at all a big deal. I don't expect her to automatically know who I am on a date with or not. I get a call from a different girl in the friend group that night who tells me that my friend called her and she was upset about what happened earlier. So I immediately call my friend and ask if we can talk. She says it was rude of me to brush her off. It wouldn't have been a big deal to join us, and her other friend lets her do this all the time. This gets to me a little bit because I feel like the two situations are only being compared because her friend and I are both not straight. I tell her that because it was a date, it's different and that she can't expect to join me on a first date. She keeps arguing, and finally I get fed up and I snap at her. Be honest, if I was on a date with a guy, you would have taken no for an answer and not had a problem, and then hung up. She has not talked to me since then, but she told me the entire friend group are now split. I know this because the friend who first told me that she was upset, as well as one other girl, messaged me individually to let me know what was going on and that they're sorry about what happened. The messages from the people on her side are making me second guess myself. I do get that I snapped at her on the phone and I was rude at the end of our conversation. I don't think I'm wrong for not wanting her to join us, but am I the jerk for the way I behaved at the end of the conversation? Update. Okay, so the 2 girls who reached out and sided with me just let me know she's been saying stuff that heavily implies that I'm actually straight. So I guess that explains a lot of it. They obviously were not okay with it. They both left the group chat and still want to be friends with me. The other people in our group chat have said nothing to me, and honestly, I don't need the drama. It sucks to realize a friend of mine felt this way about me for years, but I'm glad I at least know what's up now. I think it's weird that she's making such a big deal about not being able to third wheel on a first date. So weird. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You were on a date and politely told her that she couldn't join you. No reasonable adult would expect to intrude on a first date and get offended when they were asked to leave. If she had a problem, it was entirely in her own head. Am I the jerk for telling the mother of my kid that I don't want her partner at my son's Taekwondo belt promotion? I, 26 male, have a 5-year-old son with my ex who's 26 female. We share custody of him through verbal agreement. We split time pretty equally between both parties, and things have been pretty smooth for the most part. She got a new boyfriend almost 2 years ago now, and it was a weird transition, but I believe for the most part I've been pretty welcoming and cooperative with the whole thing since he is involved in my son's life as well. They have another younger baby now as well. For the most part, we're all on the same page when it comes to my son, and he's a cool dude that I don't have a problem with. A couple months back now, my ex and I put my son in sports, and he's been doing Taekwondo. On her days, she or her boyfriend takes my son to practice, and on my days, I take him. Things were smooth. There were boundaries, and we didn't really interfere in each other's days with my son since he loves to spend time with us both. Things started getting a little rocky, however, a couple weeks back when her boyfriend decided to join the same Taekwondo my son did. Again, me trying to cooperate, said no problem. You guys do what you think is best on your days. I trust you. I won't lie, it felt a little intrusive for some reason, but I feel like it's something I just have to deal with as a single dad. Things again took a nosedive when on the day I was supposed to take my son to practice, my ex's boyfriend took him instead since he was going there now too. I got upset and said since it was my day, I felt like they stole that from me. I talked to her boyfriend and I told him that as cool as he was, I didn't really want to go see him practicing with my son doing Taekwondo class that I pay for, but that on my ex's day with my son, he was more than welcome to take him to practice if she wanted him to. Fast forward to today. My ex messages me and tells me that my son is getting a promotion to yellow belt this Friday and that her boyfriend is also happening to test for his belt on the same day and at the same time. Keep in mind, this is falling on my weekend. I told her that I feel like I need a little space to experience father and son things with my son without any interference and that I felt a little suffocated. She said it's a public space and her boyfriend can be there too as well. I told her I felt my boundaries as a parent were not being respected and I told her I didn't want him there. We went back and forth and got into an argument about it. I don't know if I'm being too possessive with the time I'm supposed to spend with my son or if I'm not being inclusive enough with his now other side of the family, his stepdad now technically. We're friends, but I don't want to be friends with him. Certainly don't want to share my time with my son with him since he can see him on the days my son is with his mom. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Stop competing with your ex's boyfriend. He apparently is now in your son's life, and you had better find a way to co-parent nicely. Your son will greatly benefit from a cooperative relationship. If you don't, your son will figure it out, and your relationship with him will go south. And the more people that love your son, the better for him. Your son isn't choosing between you and your ex's boyfriend. There's room for both of you in his life. You're the jerk. This event isn't about you, it's about celebrating your son and everyone else who is paying for the class. I think it's weird that the school is mixing ages like that within a single class, but that's sort of beside the point here. Who are you to tell another student they have to miss their promotion just because you are too insecure to see your ex's new partner getting along with your son? If anything, you should be grateful that she's found someone who cares about and supports him, instead of all the crappy stories we see on here with partners who treat them like garbage. I'm going against the grain here. I think, so far, no jerks here. I completely get what you're feeling, and I think you're focused on the wrong thing. Your ex is right. You can't demand that her boyfriend miss his grading process because you don't want to see him while your son grades. Besides it being a public place, who does and does not grade up is up to the instructor. Here's what you should do. You apologize for asking for that. Say you realize that it was selfish and also not what you really want. Then tell her, when boyfriend took son to class, it felt like him taking away your limited time with your son, and that your real concern isn't whether boyfriend is there, but the symptom that because he's there anyway, it's fine for him to step in on your time with your kid, which it's not. Boyfriend won't take time off to help me after a hysterectomy. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 3 years now. We're both single parents and have chosen to not live together at this time. However, we do have lots of sleepovers on weekends, alternating between which house. I was recently diagnosed with a blood disorder and subsequently needed to get a hysterectomy. My boyfriend has a great job with PTO, yet he says he can't drive me to surgery or pick me up or help me out afterward because he has to work. Late last year, he suffered some family issues, and without even asking, I took time off to be there and be supportive. I'm upset that he won't do the same for me. I get the difficulty of being single parents and juggling work-life-home balance, but I feel like he's being inconsiderate and unsupportive by basically telling me I'm on my own for my surgery and he can't show up in any way to be supportive. Am I the jerk? Am I being overly sensitive? Edit. He works for the federal government. We each have a kid in grade school and he also has a 17-year-old. We live 5 miles from each other. My surgery arrival time is 5:30 a.m., so he can totally drive me, leave his kids at home, then go back and take kids to school, and be back to the hospital in time before my surgery begins. We talked extensively before the surgery was scheduled about the help I'll need, and he said he will take care of me because that's his job as my boyfriend. His ex-wife had a similar surgery, so he's fully aware of how major this surgery is. My surgery needs to happen ASAP, so I don't have much choice in picking a date. Once the doctor told me what day they scheduled it, boyfriend said his day off wasn't until a few days later. He then said there's not much he can do and he said sorry. I finally told him I was upset about his response to helping me during my surgery, to which he replied about how he has to work and take care of his kids, so he thought I should find someone without responsibilities the day of my surgery to help out. I have no family within driving distance. They're all a plane ride away. I have had several friends step up to help, as well as an ex-boyfriend offer to help, yet boyfriend is too busy. This is something that, if you're a halfway decent person, you might consider doing for a friend of a friend, just because it's the right thing to do. OP. Exactly. I've done the same. I actually told him he wasn't just being an unsupportive boyfriend, but also being an unsupportive friend. Not the jerk, but he is. What kind of relationship do you have where you can support him, but he can't support you? If he's unwilling to help you out after major surgery, what's he going to be like in a real crisis? Good luck. OP. You're right, and this seems to be the dynamic in our relationship. He will be supportive only when it's convenient for him. Is there any possibility that there's a good reason? Like, does he have medical PTSD? Or has his mom passed after a hysterectomy? Or is he just terrified of blood? OP. Nope, no reason like this at all. There are many great qualities to him. However, he is only an equal partner when it's convenient, and that con was rapidly becoming a deal breaker. His response to my hysterectomy is the nail in the coffin for me. Update. I expressed how I feel to my boyfriend. He gave me a laundry list as to why it's so hard for him to help me out. He has a job and he's a single dad, and he said that people only help when they don't have anything on their plates. But he sees his mistake and will now help me. He's now giving me the silent treatment because I upset him by calling him out. For me, the relationship is now over. Relationship is officially over. He actually broke up with me before I could break up with him. He was so angry about me calling him out and expressing how hurt I was that he ended it. I agree with you all. I deserve so much better. I'm a little mad at myself for putting up with less than I deserve for nearly 3 years. That's directly related to my wounding, and I will take this time to be single and work on myself so I can be the best self in the next relationship. This isn't the first time he's acted like an unsupportive jerk, but it sure as heck was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Thanks for the feedback, and thanks for being more supportive than my ex-boyfriend. Teacher lost it. So, my best friend loves every time I tell this story, so I thought I would share it with all of you. In high school, I had an AP English teacher who was very opinionated in her grading. If she loved a book the class had to read and you didn't get a good grade on your report when you turned it in. I was an avid reader. In fact, I cleaned out my school library in 3rd grade. Let's just say I wasn't a fan of her literal selections. She was also the kind of teacher that thought her class was the most important one you had. Due to this, the workload was quite substantial. Coming up on our final exam, she gave the class a talk 1 week before the final. She would be weighing our grade for the semester, giving 60% of it to the final. She explained she was preparing us for college. However, since she was giving so much weight to the final, she would give us an opportunity to earn extra credit. For every 4 lines of the epic poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, you could memorize and write verbatim on the back of the test, you would receive 1 point of extra credit. Goody hands time. I had a rough year due to her grading style, so I was getting a B in the class at the time. However, this was my moment to shine. I have a knack for remembering things. In fact, as a freshman, I learned all of the lines for the lead role of Neil Simmons' Rumors 2 hours before opening night due to the lead dropping out. I then performed the role for 3 nights without dropping a line. So this opportunity seemed well made for me, and I wasn't going to let it pass by. I got home and looked up the poem. It was well over 400 lines. I got to work. The final exam finally came. I sat down confidently in my seat and eagerly waited to receive my test. We received our 15-page final and were told that we had 3.5 hours to complete it. I put my name at the top and immediately flipped it over to the back. For the next 8 minutes, I ravenously wrote out 400 straight lines from the epic poem verbatim. That step complete, I decided to look at the questions she intended for us to answer. It was filled with multiple choice, essays, and fill-in-the-blank questions. I took a few minutes to fill in the blanks I knew, guessed at the multiple choice ones I didn't know, and completely ignored her biased essays. Now for the fun part. After a grueling 15 minutes total into the 3.5-hour final, I walked triumphantly up to the teacher's desk. I set my test on her desk and said, "Have a great summer." She said, "Very funny. It's a 3.5 hour final. Sit down and finish your test. I responded, No, I'm finished. I got over 100. She said, Let me see your paper. She looked through my test. She saw the empty essays and empty fill in the blanks. Now even more annoyed with me, she said, You haven't answered half of these. It's a 3.5 hour final. Sit down and finish your test. I wouldn't be denied. No, I'm finished. I got over 100. At this point, she's getting very upset, and the color in her face is starting to shift. How do you know you got over 100 when you haven't done half of it? She demanded. With a big smile, I said, Look at the back. You said for every 4 lines of the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner we memorized and wrote on the back, we would get 1 point of extra credit. You will notice I've written 400 lines from the poem. By my math, that equals 100% of extra credit. Anything I answered in this nonsense is gravy, so over 100. She turned red. Her knuckles went white holding the paper, and she stared at me with hate in her eyes. I said, Have a great summer, as I walked out, feeling like I had just dropped Mike Tyson with a single blow. I got an A in the class. My final was 145 out of 100. Am I the jerk for canceling our trip after my fiancé decided to bring her son? I, 33, male, have been with Natalie, who's 32, for 2 years. We're getting married soon, and she shares custody of her 10-year-old son with her ex-husband. Ever since her ex-husband got sick, Natalie kept bringing her son over more often. Sometimes her mom would take him due to work, etc. We've been having issues because of that, because Natalie has to bring my stepson with us wherever we go. We started going out less and less. Since it's been a month since we've gone out, and since her ex has gotten better, I've arranged for a trip to the beach for the weekend. It's supposed to be a couple's getaway. She was excited for it and prepared for everything. The night before the trip, she comes up to me and says, Hey, Tom is sick again, and he asked if I can take Taylor to spend the weekend with us. I was gobsmacked. I asked what she told him, and she said that she agreed. She then proceeded to tell me that she'd like to take Taylor with us to the beach. I got upset and told her to not bother because the trip was officially canceled. She looked at me shocked, but I told her she shouldn't act shocked and surprised after she successfully ruined yet another opportunity for us to have quality alone time together. She went on about how she couldn't believe that I would expect her to ditch her son since her mom was busy as well and getting a babysitter wasn't on the table. I just shrugged and told her it was done. Then I walked out. I went with the guys instead, and she's been upset with me about it, saying I could have just agreed to let my stepson Taylor come with us, and we would have at least had some family time together while Tom gets better. She said I was the one who messed up. Am I the jerk? Edit info, because I feel like this has gone into a whole different direction. Folks here need to chill out. Nowhere in my post did I mention not being ready or accepting to be a step-parent. Trust me, I am ready, and so far have been nothing but understanding and patient. I love my stepson and consider him as my own, but, and read this part carefully, my problem is with his mom constantly changing plans last minute and not even asking if that's okay with me. And yes, I had to go out with the guys instead. Didn't know what else to do since she obviously wanted some space from me for the weekend, which is alright with me, by the way. I'm not mad about that at all. I just appreciated if she had been a little bit more considerate of my thoughts and opinions. You're the jerk. You marry a woman, you accept her family. She has a son, that's her family. Now it's yours. Get over it or break up. Those are your options. Oh, for goodness sake. She didn't change the plan because she wanted to. Her ex got sick. Just what exactly did you expect her to do in this situation? Drop him off at the orphanage? Leave him home alone? You're the jerk. You said in a comment that you love her son like your own. Did you call your family to see if anyone could watch him? Yeah, OP, I think you're missing the point on multiple fronts. For one thing, dating someone who has a kid means that that kid is going to have to take priority at all times and will need to tag along. That's the nature of the beast when it comes to dating a parent, especially in this case where it sounds like the ex is like long-term sick and has bouts where it acts up. And OP, if it is how it sounds and the ex passes, what do you expect is going to happen? When that kid comes to live with you full-time, you're not going to get quality time like you think you will. Getaway trips might rarely happen. Having time alone together will rarely happen. Once again, that's the nature of the beast when you're dating a person with a kid. If you can't handle that now, when it's more like a part-time thing, you are not going to be able to handle it all down the line. Get out of this relationship. You're obviously not really prepared for the challenges being a step-parent actually has. OP, you're the jerk for not breaking it off. We haven't been out for a month is normal in parent land. It's completely fine to not want to be a parent at all, or even just not right now. Unfortunately, that means not dating a woman that has a kid, even if she is otherwise the perfect woman. The fact she hoped you could bond as a family tells me she's really hoping you'll grow closer and see him as your stepson, which he will be. Whereas your reaction that you need a break from him after spending more time with him than usual because his actual dad is sick. Let alone that your response to all of this is weekend with the boys, rather than talking through your thoughts and feelings like adults. This isn't going to last. The two of you aren't compatible. Karen demands I babysit for her, even though I won't be able to because we're friends. So about a week ago, I got a call from someone I would consider a friend. We're not super close, but we are friendly, and we get together with the same group of friends a lot. She called and said that her kids were talking about how much fun they have with mine and wanted to know if we would be free this coming Saturday, a week and a half away at the time. My kids really do like hers, and I want to be better friends with her as well, so I said sure. She was relieved and said her husband would be out of town and she needed a babysitter from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I felt like it was a major bait and switch because I thought she wanted to do something altogether, but I felt bad backing out when I had already told her I was completely free that day. I should have said something right then, but I didn't. Well, yesterday I ran into a friend of mine and she asked if I was excited for Saturday. I thought that was weird because no, I'm not excited to babysit someone else's kids for 14 hours. But I said my kids were definitely excited. She said, "Oh, good. Is your husband taking them to do something fun? Or who's watching them?" To which I made a face and responded that I was watching them. So then she was the one who was confused and said, "So you're not coming?" Well, last week I didn't go to the end-of-year PTA meeting because I had just started my period and I felt crummy and I didn't want to go. I guess after the fact, some friends went out to lunch. They decided to plan a big girls' day to relax before the kids are back home all day for the summer. Going to the city, shopping, pedicures, eating at nice restaurants, etc. And when it was brought up that I would probably love to go too, this friend said she needed to talk to me about some PTA stuff that I missed, so she would tell me about it when she called me. But instead, she decided to use me as her babysitter. So I called the friend, and I told her I wasn't aware of the girls' day at the time, and that I wouldn't be able to watch her kids after all. She asked if my husband could watch her kids too, which was no. She started crying that she really needed this, and what would she do now since her husband won't be home and it's too late to find someone willing to watch 5 kids for 14 hours with no pay. And then once the tears weren't working, she just got angry. She said it was rude to back out of a commitment just so I could selfishly do something fun, and how I'm an awful friend. My friends are all feeling super uncomfortable with this whole thing. We're all typically a very happy and drama-free friend group, so I know no one wants to take sides, and now I'm wondering if I should even go at all. So, am I the jerk for backing out of watching her kids after I had committed to it already? Obviously, your friend group isn't as drama-free as you think they are. OP. It's true though, we're not super tight-knit, we don't get together that often, and I know there's times some get together and others don't, and it's not a big deal. But I'm beginning to wonder if maybe it is a little more tight-knit than I realized, and I'm just not a part of it in that way. You should really question those friends who are siding with her. OP, this has been the most hurtful part of it all. So we're not the type of friend group that gets together all the time and live at each other's houses or anything. We get together for birthdays every once in a while, or after a meeting like this day. But I've known most of them since I've lived here for over a decade, so I thought we had some substance to our relationships. But no one is acting like it was super absurd. I'm honestly wondering if I even want to go at this point. Before writing the post, I was just angry and annoyed at this one person. But after reading comments and thinking about it, it's just kind of sad that no one really cared. By the way, I'm definitely not saying I'll stay and watch her kids, but maybe just spend the day doing something for myself. Update. I followed the advice from a lot of you to talk to one of the friends I'm closer to in the group, Sarah, to kind of get a feel for what was going on. Sarah said she was kind of frustrated with everyone. After I ran into the friend, her name is Casey, to make it less confusing, Casey had filled everyone in on what had happened. They all agreed that the mean friend, Jenny, shouldn't have lied or tricked me into watching her kids, but they all sympathized with her. I guess it is Jenny's 15th anniversary this weekend, but her husband forgot and had planned a boys' camping trip. So she was sad and angry with her husband and they all knew she would really need a little getaway to cheer her up. Though it doesn't sound like anyone blamed me for not babysitting, they were disappointed for her and put all of their energy into making a plan for her to still be able to go. No one really seemed to bat an eye whether I was going to go or not, or cared that I was sad, except for Sarah. However, when it came time to make final plans for everything, someone decided to do the math and realized that if I was going to come, we would no longer all fit into the Suburban my friend Kim was going to drive. It's a 2-hour drive to the city, so taking one vehicle was definitely ideal. Sarah volunteered to drive her car, and we would just take 2. But it all just felt so forced and uncomfortable that I just ended up backing out. I mentioned in a few of my comments that I've always known I'm not one of the most involved friends in the group, but I've known most of them for almost a decade, so I guess I thought there would be more substance to our friendship than they all did. I don't think any of them have anything against me or dislike me, but I'm realizing I'm just not that important to them. It was pretty disappointing, and it definitely opened my eyes. So all of that happened on Thursday, and I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty heartbroken by all of it. The next day when my husband came home for lunch, he told me to hurry and pack an overnight bag because he had booked a hotel room for me and my sister-in-law to go have our own girls' night. His mom and sister pulled up an hour later so his mom could watch the kids after my husband went back to work, and his sister, who is seriously just the best, and I had the best 24-hour getaway ever. Am I the jerk for purchasing my guy friend his dream birthday present and outshining his girlfriend in the process? My guy friend, Tom, has been one of my best friends since college. We're in our mid-20s now, and both of us are currently in committed relationships with long-term partners. I've never had any feelings for Tom, nor has he ever had feelings for me. Since college, Tom has been a huge watch fanatic. 2 months ago, he was showing me this stunning vintage watch and made an offhanded comment about how he would die of joy if he were to somehow get his hands on one. Very coincidentally, I was in New York City a few weeks ago, and I stumbled upon this watch store that just so happened to have the exact one Tom wanted. It was expensive, I won't lie, at about $2,500, but I decided to get it for his 25th birthday. To me, it was basically fate. My boyfriend and I do very well financially, so this was something that I could personally afford and wanted to buy for Tom, especially knowing how happy it would make him. Tom has a tradition of hosting a dinner party at his place for his birthday and then following up with a cake and gift opening. I told him before the dinner that my gift was a huge surprise and asked if he could save it for last, and he agreed. His girlfriend ends up going first, and she gets him this gorgeous sweater that she crocheted for him and a book that he's been wanting, which I thought was super thoughtful and lovely. Last, it was my gift. When he opened it and saw what it was, he literally screamed, hopped over a bunch of people, and squeezed me in this bear hug. I was so happy to see him happy. It genuinely filled me with so much joy. He even got emotional, and I saw him swipe a few tears. He also said that it was the best gift he had ever received. The whole time, his girlfriend was only slightly smiling and stayed quiet. The next morning, I get a text from his girlfriend that essentially said that although she appreciated my thoughtful gift, she thought it was a bit out of touch and lacking awareness. She admitted that Tom had also told her about the watch and she wanted to get it for him, but it was way out of her budget. She accused me of knowing this. I had no idea, and still getting it to rub it in her face and to outshine her. She finished by saying how she felt like I had overstepped a boundary by getting the gift and would appreciate me not doing anything similar to it again in the future. I responded and told her that while I could see her point of view, I was just trying to do a nice thing for a close friend of mine. I asked her, wouldn't you rather he had gotten the gift and seen the happiness that it brought him than not getting it at all? She responded that that happiness was only shared between me and Tom and no one else, and that she felt hurt by my actions. Only my boyfriend knows about this and he's on my side, but thinking through it all again, I do see how I could have overstepped. But my boyfriend says that it's not my job to apologize for her insecurities. So, am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. You weren't thinking of how to hurt her. You just wanted a nice gift for your friend. Your boyfriend is right. You don't need to apologize for her insecurities. Exactly. I can empathize with how the girlfriend must have felt, but she was out of line to reach out to OP for what was just a kind gesture. It's also what's in the best interest of her boyfriend. She should just be happy for him that he was able to get something he really wanted rather than envious she couldn't provide it. That's real love. I'd say no jerks here. Both point of views are valid. She was right to make the gift, and the girlfriend had valid reasons to be upset. Not being in the position financially to make a similar gift, feeling outshined. OP, next time you find something special and expensive, Team up with the girlfriend and make it a shared gift. That's the way to become a bridesmaid instead of being barred from the wedding. The girlfriend's point of view was valid up until she said that happiness was only shared between her and Tom and no one else. Up until then, I felt bad for her, as I could easily empathize with her. I've been outshined in gift giving before. She needs to accept that just because you're someone's significant other, that doesn't mean you will be the only one to provide your partner with happiness in their life. Giving him something that you knew he really wanted was certainly thoughtful, but telling him to save it for last was attention-seeking. I would feel the same way even if he didn't have a girlfriend, but especially because he does. I think you were well-intentioned, but should not have made your gift the star of the show in such an obvious way. He would have loved it just as much if you hadn't showcased it like that and blatantly diminished the gifts everyone else, including his girlfriend, had bought. You're the jerk. It isn't so much her insecurities as your breach of etiquette giving a gift you knew would significantly outshine all the others. This would be like if a male friend bought me a DeLorean for my birthday. I know Reddit boy would feel horrible that he couldn't buy me one himself. Well, actually, I'd just want to go for a ride in it, to be honest. I mean, that'd be really cool to me. Why can't you love me? You want me to speedrun the game so you have someone to talk to? Fine. I, 25, female, have a friend who's also 25 who's been wanting me to play Zelda Breath of the Wild for years now. It's not that I'm not interested in playing. Heck, I bought the game ages ago. I've just been more invested in other things. After 5 or so years, I finally cracked down to play and I absolutely love it. My friend is equally excited and can't wait for me to get to their favorite parts. No, literally, they can't wait. Almost daily, I'm hounded with DMs asking how I like the game. Did I meet A yet? Have I done B yet? Have I finished C quest? Why is it taking so long for me to finish C quest? I prefer taking things on my own time. With a game of this scale, I want to take my sweet time exploring and finding things as I go. I feel like I'm progressing the plot at a decent pace, 50 hours into a game that other people have spent 300 hours on, and I'm doing fun side quests. Also, I have other hobbies, and I've been playing the game along with the other things going on in my life. I've told them as much, and they're not very happy about it. At first, they were supportive, if not a little pushy, for me to play the game. When I talk about certain plot points and gameplay that I enjoyed, they'd brush off my gushing and say things along the lines of, "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. You're not ready. Keep going." As I juggled between the game's 2 main missions, they pushed me to do one over the other because it's where the good stuff happens. Despite me saying multiple times that I wanted to go at my own pace and do both missions together, they hounded me with more messages about how I wasn't playing it right. I talked to them about it probably dozens of times, and they explained that they were so pushy because they needed someone else to talk to about the game. No, they wouldn't stop hounding me. I needed to keep going for them, for our friendship. I'd thank them later. Speedrun. So I thought, to heck with it. They want me to speedrun, then I'll speedrun. I used guides and read up things to finish the game as quickly as I could. I honestly have no clue what I did or how I finished, but I did. I eventually sent them a screen cap of my finished game file and gave them my honest opinion. I hated it. There was no build-up to anything. I didn't know any character well enough to be invested in their struggles, and the puzzles ranged from stupidly easy to unnecessarily complicated. That part of the game that they couldn't wait for me to find skipped over the dialogue. It wasn't worth the extra time. After all, I needed to finish the game as soon as possible, right? Needless to say, we're not friends anymore. Now that I've returned to my original save file and I'm playing it how I want, I can say that Breath of the Wild is one of the best games I've played. Since I skipped over so much for the sake of being petty, a lot of things still feel new to me. I have no shortage of other friends to talk about the game with, and thankfully, these ones encourage me to take my time. They can't wait for me to get to their favorite parts. But not literally. They'll wait however long it takes me. Am I the jerk for not wanting to share a house in my 30s? My partner, male 35, of 1 year, and I, 34 female, are looking for a flat to rent so we can move in together, or we can stay in the one I'm currently renting. He can move in. Either one's fine with me. I've moved out when I was 18, and with the exception of first year of uni, I haven't lived with flatmates unless you count my ex-boyfriend. My current partner, Adam, has lived with his family till he was 25, then with his girlfriend, then flatmates, then girlfriend, and back to flatmates. We're currently looking for flats, and we're lucky enough that rent is not a problem and we can pick and choose. Now, Adam dropped a bombshell. He wants to live with a flatmate, his friend and his girlfriend. I said absolutely no without even thinking about it. I'm way too used to independence to share a flat with other people. That might have been fine in my 20s, but not at this point in my life. Adam got really upset and asked me to at least think about it. I told him that I'm sorry, but I don't have to, and the answer is no. I'm not willing to sacrifice my lifestyle and comfort to share a house with other people. He said his friends can't afford to rent on their own, and we would be doing them a favor. I stood my ground and said, I'm sorry, but this is non-negotiable. He called me a spoiled brat and a selfish jerk. He knows I grew up poor, so the spoiled brat comment was really mean. He's refused to go to the house viewings that we've had scheduled, and to the most recent one, he brought his friend. I got really annoyed and confronted him once we were alone. He still thinks I'm the jerk for not even trying to share a house, and I told him I'm way too old to try it since I know I won't like it. He's still mad. I understand that sharing is a necessity for some while others enjoy it. I like my peace and quiet, and I worked hard to be able to afford that. But I worry he might be right. Am I the jerk for not wanting to share my house? Not the jerk. You need to press pause on your plans to move in with your boyfriend if he's more concerned about helping his buddy than with you feeling comfortable in your own home. It's a giant red flag that his response to a disagreement with you is to insult you and then completely ignore your side and overrule you by bringing his buddy to the showing. Exactly. The fact he cares more about his friends than your feelings speaks volumes to me. I would be thinking more about the long-term longevity of my relationship just because of that. I would tell him that you need to rethink about moving in with him at all since you have different thoughts on the matter. Not the jerk. I, 38 female, am in a new relationship with 51 male, and his texts are starting to concern me. My current boyfriend and I have been together since February, and we've had a few arguments, but generally things are good. What I can't wrap my head around is some of our text messages that he sends me. They come out of nowhere and they feel a little nuts to me. I don't know if I'm the one being a jerk here, but I don't know what to make of them. I've told him it puts me off, but he doesn't seem to hear me. This is an example of one he sent today after he video called at lunch. I answered, but he hung up and wouldn't answer when I called him back. I left a message saying I guess he didn't have service and couldn't answer, but just call back if it's important. His reply was, "What would be the point in answering after seeing you're dressed up? Hair done. This tells me you've been up for hours, and in that time, I guarantee that your phone has been in your hand a lot, and never once did you have the desire or want to call or text and say hello, good morning, I love you, or even buzz off for that matter. And that makes me feel bad, to be honest. So, I didn't answer." 5 minutes later, I got this. "And because you still have nothing to say, that just tells me I was right." This kind of thing is getting more frequent. I feel like it's kind of excessive, but he says it feels like I don't love him. I don't even know how to respond, honestly. Update. I packed a bag, my laptop, my pew-pew, important paperwork, etc. Most of my stuff is in storage because we were supposed to move at the end of the month. I didn't want to leave him there, but his text got really ugly when I told him it was over. I feel a lot safer at my friend's house out of town. The barrage of texts have gone from nasty to desperate to accusing me of lying and never caring about him to him taking photos of gifts he supposedly bought me to making horrible threats. Apparently, I'm not giving a hoot about it, but here I sit trying to talk to you and work this thing out because I care more about you than I do the lies. I love you, D. Why can't that be enough for you? I'm so done with this BS. It's probably going to be hard trying to get him out of my life, but I'm saving the texts and I'm going to at least try to get a protective order tomorrow. Thank you all for your comments. They reaffirmed that this behavior is unacceptable. I think I kept adjusting to the new normal every time he would do something that was off, but not quite bad enough to break up over. We had endless talks about his behavior, and he was very good at reassuring me he'd work on it and then being the best boyfriend imaginable. It's like he's two different people, but I'm positive the nice side is an absolute lie now after some of the stuff he said. I'm safe for now and definitely won't be going home without an escort. To answer the questions about why we moved in so quickly, we've been good friends for 5 years and he never once acted like this. I thought I knew him pretty well, so that's why I gave him the benefit of the doubt for so long and let him move in. When he proposed, it was so romantic and he was so convincing, I got a little swept up in the idea that it was real. Karen doesn't like that I removed my rose bushes, so I send her on a goose chase. Karen comes over and knocks on my door and tells me she doesn't like that I removed the rose bushes, and I told Karen I don't care. She asked me to clarify what I said, and I say, "I don't give a hoot what you think." Shocked, she goes, "You can't speak to me like that." To which I said, "Well, I just did." "Who do you work for?" Quick thinking. "Oh, I work for local HVAC company as a sales manager." She goes, "Oh, that's nice." 2 days later, Karen comes over and tells me that I've never worked for local HVAC company and I'm lying. I smile and go, "Oops, forgot I just changed jobs. I work at the local digital ad agency." Karen goes off on her merry little way. 3 days later, she comes back and advises me it's a crime to lie to her about where I work at. I laugh. She tells me I'm being unprofessional. I laugh. Boys, I work for a 100% work-from-home company that no one has ever heard of, and I haven't updated my LinkedIn since I started my job. Not even sure if it would be possible for a regular person to figure out who I work for. I go, "Fine. Look, you can go complain to my boss if you want, but I'm the GM at the local Ford dealer." It's been 4 days. No, I don't work at the local Ford dealer. No, Karen hasn't come back. I sure hope the GM at the local Ford dealer doesn't share a similar name to mine. My best friend told me to leave the guy that I was dating, but now she's dating him. I do not know what to do and I need to rant. A little backstory. I've dated this guy on and off for multiple years, but this time it was actually getting serious. However, things started to get weird again. He started ignoring me, would walk past me when he saw me, became distant and avoiding, but sometimes he would be very cute towards me, called me late at night just to make sure that I got home safe, mostly when I went out on the weekends, give me unexpected shows of love, etc. It was all very confusing. So one day I was ranting to my best friend about it, and she basically told me to leave him. Mind you, the three of us have been close friends for a very long time. But she started saying that he didn't deserve me, that he was immature, that it was always the same with him, that I needed someone who would appreciate me for me. And I agreed, but I still wanted to give him a chance, so I did. Almost every day she kept asking me about it and reminding me, when she could, that he was mistreating me. Which he was. No one deserves to be ignored for no reason. Finally, things ended between us after I poured my heart out to him and he promised that he would change for me. But the next day, it got even worse and he couldn't even look at me. After that, I really didn't talk to him and tried to avoid him, just as he had done to me. I was too hurt to even face him. A few weeks later, we saw each other at a party and he apologized and told me that he had really bad commitment issues, and that was that. I cut all kinds of contact with him after that. In that same party, however, he spent the whole time with my best friend, outside and alone, doing who knows what. I didn't really go up to them because I wanted to avoid the whole situation and believed that she was just hanging out with a long-term friend. It's now been around 4 months, and my best friend and him have started dating. How did I find out? By another mutual friend of ours when they asked me how I felt about it. Needless to say, I had no idea. Now my friend is poking around, asking why it feels like I'm mad at her. I haven't spoken to her about it, and it's really not in my plans to do so. I have slowly diminished contact between us, especially now that I'm on a holiday vacation. What do I do now? Am I overreacting? You are not overreacting. There's no way that she wasn't interested in him when she was telling you to break up with him. There's no way her opinion of him changed so quickly. Even if somehow she fell for him after you two broke up, you would not want to be friends with someone who would date someone who treated you like your ex. She knows how he treated you, yet thinks that he's a good person to date? You're better off without her in your life, so just live your best life away from someone who wants drama. Your best friend wanted you out of the way so she could get the guy. I'd cut her out of your life personally. Karen insists I share my Nintendo Switch with her brat. This just happened the other day, and after sharing this story with my friends and family, a few of them suggested that I share it here. The scene is a Southwest airline flight. I was sitting in a window seat next to two lovely ladies, and directly horizontal from us was an empty seat, a mom and her son. The flight was taking off. For those who don't know, you are required to stay seated and keep your seatbelts on for the beginning of the flight until the captain says otherwise. I was strapped in my seat and decided to take out my Nintendo Switch from my carry-on beneath my feet. "Excuse me, ma'am." I didn't realize at first that the mother in the seats horizontal from me was trying to get my attention. She unbuckled her belt and moved to the empty seat by my aisle, closer to me. "Ma'am, with the video game." I lifted my head, but the stranger next to me nudged me as well. "That lady wants you to get your attention," the woman next to me muttered. I turned my head to see this woman leaning across the aisle with her hands on the armrest of the aisle seat in my row. Sorry, she began. I just wanted to know if there was any way that my son could use that game for a little while. I'm so sorry, I began. My Nintendo Switch is just really important to me. I don't feel comfortable giving it to anyone I don't know. I don't even let my sister play with it. I was going to continue, but the woman cut me off. Oh, my son's not like most kids, she replied. He's not destructive. His cousin has one of these, and he knows how to play it. She smiled and set her hand out. The two women seated next to me looked at me as if they were also in disbelief. I'm sorry, I said again. I just don't feel comfortable with it. I bought it for me. How old are you? The woman said with a huff, retracting her hand and slapping it in her lap. I'm 25, but I don't see how that matters, I replied, growing exceptionally uncomfortable. Well, she began, clearly sounding agitated. My son is 8. This is an hour and 45-minute flight, and he just wants something to do. He can't see it for a few minutes. No, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm sorry, but I'm expecting you to understand since this is my property. I put my head down and I unpaused my game as to ignore anything else that she had to say. Are you serious? She seemed genuinely livid. Well, son, sorry buddy, not everyone knows how to share, the woman said to her kid who was next to her. Her kid started whining and kicking the seat in front of him. Thanks for this, she said to me. A sweet kid just wants to share with you, and you're being ignorant about it. Before I even opened my mouth, one of the ladies in my row snapped back at her. How dare you bring that energy on this plane? She told you so kindly that she doesn't feel comfortable with passing her electronics to a stranger. The mother wasn't having it. She's an adult and can't share with a kid for a few minutes of a nearly 2-hour flight? You should have brought something for him to do then, the woman in my row responded. It shut her up good. At the end of the flight, the woman collected her luggage from the overhead bins and said, I hope you're happy going against God's word, not sharing with a kid. Some of the people around us giggled. I'm sure they all overheard the drama at the beginning of the flight. I've come across some entitled people in my life, but this strange lady took the cake. The perfect comeback at baggage would have been to ask the chapter and verse where this was going against God's word. Am I the jerk for not allowing my daughter to quit competitive dance? I, 30 female, have a daughter, Lily, who's 14. We just moved states, husband is in the army, and she'll be going to a new school soon, and she's deciding on her new subjects. She did French last year and did extremely well, was way ahead in her class, but she spent a lot of time after school studying for that one language. She said she had fun doing it, doubtful, and enjoyed it very much. I need to add that Lily does competitive dance, which means that she doesn't have much time left after school. I did competitive dance as a kid, and I know how hard it is to find time for studying. She came to me the other day telling me that her new school doesn't offer French, but they offer Spanish, and she wanted to take it and asked me if I could sign her up to private French lessons so that she can learn both languages. I told her that absolutely not, that with her dance, she won't have time for that, and it's too difficult of a subject, taking up too much of her time. She told me that she hasn't been enjoying dance for a while and was too scared to tell me, but she wants to quit dance. She told me that she wants to study languages and work with that when she's an adult. I told her that she won't be quitting dance because she's too good at it, and I already put in a lot of money and that she doesn't need to know other languages. She'll get by with English just fine. Of course, as teenagers do, she threw a fit and ran to her room. She accused me of living vicariously through her. When did a 14-year-old learn that phrase though? And I grounded her for it. She hasn't talked to me since this morning. My husband came back from work and asked me what happened, and I explained to him that she told me that I should consider letting her quit dance, that languages are a useful skill. Apparently, they always look for people who speak languages, and it'll be better than dance for her future. I told him I didn't want to talk to him anymore and called my sister to vent. Surprisingly, my sister took my husband's and Lily's side, and she joked that I should post here if I don't believe her. So I decided to give it a try. Am I the jerk for not allowing my daughter to quit dance and take language classes instead? You're not listening to your kid's interests. She told you what she likes. You don't believe her, her dad, or your own sister. Hopefully you believe countless people who think you are the jerk, and a huge jerk at that. I couldn't believe that. She put tons of extra hours in and did really well in French, but mom still doesn't believe she could have enjoyed it. Just because OP loves dance and hates learning new languages doesn't mean her daughter will be the same. Knowing more languages is certainly a better career path than pro dancing. So 2 people told you that you're in the wrong here and you're seeking people to agree with you. Stop living your personal dreams through your daughter. What is your end goal for her? Something you couldn't achieve? She already told you she doesn't want to continue dance. Time and money, your unfulfilled dreams, all on your daughter's back. Do you know what normal parents do when their kid decides they don't enjoy sport anymore? They allow them to quit and focus on something they love. Your daughter is going to resent you forever. You're the jerk. Not the jerk. Going against the grain here, but I don't think you're the jerk for this. I used to play golf professionally, even won a few big tournaments. Golf was my life, even how I met my wife. She was working an event I competed in during college. Naturally, I wanted my son to follow in my footsteps. When your dad is a professional golfer, you have a world of opportunity that most kids never would. When he was growing up, I spent a fortune on his lessons, top-of-the-line equipment, training camps, you name it. My boy ended up getting a full-ride scholarship thanks to his golf talent, and I couldn't have been more proud of him. We threw a huge celebration for him, and there were even some big names in golf that came to the house. A few weeks before he was supposed to leave for college, he broke down one night and told me this wasn't what he really wanted. His dream was to go into the Army, which some recruiters at his school had tricked him into thinking was a good idea. I can't even begin to describe how disappointed in him I was. We had a huge fight about it. I told him if he makes this stupid decision to never speak to me again. He didn't, and he shipped out later that month. He gave up his scholarship and all the opportunity that would have come with it, so I never spoke to him again after that. As far as I was concerned, I had no son. In 2011, he went missing in Afghanistan. My wife is in denial and thinks we'll hear from him someday. But I know he's gone. I can feel it, an emptiness I can't even describe. Why couldn't my boy have just played golf? I caught my girlfriend using dating sites behind my back. We've been together for about a year and a half now. Last week, I went out to her place in the morning to surprise her with some food. We'd been fighting a bit, so it was going to be a full date day. She rolled over in bed, and I saw a message on her home screen saying, "You're such a beautiful girl. Why are you on dating sites?" So at this point, she had just woken up. Obviously, I'm pretty tense, and she asks me if I'm okay. I'm like, I'm not really sure. I just saw a message on your phone that said, "Why are you on dating sites? You're such a beautiful girl." She replies, "What are you talking about? That's crazy. I'm not on any dating sites." And then she ran to the restroom. She was in the restroom for quite a while and then finally comes out and goes, "Yes, I was on dating sites. We've been fighting a lot, but it's not like that. I just wanted to see what was out there." I left because I was in a pretty big panic. My ex prior to her that I was with for 10 years cheated on me constantly, and it destroyed me, so she knows how I feel about this kind of stuff. She texts me and says, "I didn't even cheat though. I would have never even met up with anyone or talked to anyone without telling you first and breaking up with you. I'm sorry that I downloaded it. I was just lost and hurting." We don't have an open relationship of any kind, and obviously she was talking to someone since that was over text, meaning she's been giving out her number. She keeps saying things like, "I'm sure it's all very worse in your head." I questioned her a bit more on it, and she said, "He was the only one I messaged. I matched with people and let my inbox fill up. I only responded to him because he's friends with Danny and Aaron." She keeps telling me it's worse in my head and I'm overreacting. I'm so torn apart. I love this girl, but after my ex, I promised myself I'd never put myself through that again. She says she doesn't want to lose me and will do whatever it takes. She said I can look through her entire phone now. Kinda late since she had a week to delete everything. So a few questions. Should I even give her another chance? Is this cheating? If I go through the phone and find obviously deleted messages, how should I respond? Is she trying to gaslight me? She just wants to hold on to you until she finds the next best thing. If you're having problems in a relationship, you should be focused on trying to find ways to make things better. You don't go on dating sites to see what's out there. How does that make your relationship better? She's already emotionally checked out. Let her go. If she keeps on justifying her actions and blaming you for overreacting, then you know it's over. She's trying out her other options while keeping you as the safe option. Based on her comment, without telling you first and breaking it off, once she finds a viable candidate, she'll just move ahead and dump you. Every single fight or argument you guys have from this point forward, you're going to wonder if she's cheating on you. It's not worth it. And like the other commenter said, she's holding on to you while keeping her options open, and no healthy relationship can grow from that. My husband, 38 male, doesn't think that I love him. For reference, let's call my husband Jack and my daughter Lily. Jack and I have been married for about 10 years, dated for 5, and have a 4-year-old. Overall, we've had an absolutely wonderful relationship. Sure, occasionally we hit a rocky spot, but we always recovered stronger than ever. Most of our friends look at us as the ideal couple too. I've never doubted that he loves me, and I've tried my best to reciprocate it. Even when he wasn't home often during our first 5 years of marriage, he came back home after that since he got a promotion. We have great communication, and I already am planning on how to approach this with him, but a second opinion would be nice, just in case someone else already dealt with something similar. Yesterday, he was doing some very acrobatic exercise in our backyard. He does this every day, even when he's almost delirious from fever, which was hilarious to see. I joked that he'd leave me to become a monk. He just froze for a second and responded, "Maybe, after Lily grows up." Sure, this could just be playful ribbing, but I had a bad feeling in my gut, and I kept poking at him. He almost fell down, which is very odd since he has excellent balance, made me leave so he could focus on his stuff. That especially made me feel even worse. The rest of the conversation happened at dinner. The gist of what he said is something like, "The signs are all there." He mentioned that we haven't been as romantic or intimate as of recent. He even said something about less attraction on my end, which isn't true. Then mentioned weeks of silence. I don't remember this happening at all. Frequent absence. I haven't been going out much, except with my friends for dinner dates, which isn't often, just 4 times a week for now. Something about initiation. The only one that somewhat made sense was how I was cutting couple time for friend time or game time, which doesn't happen all that often. I can only count 2 or 3 times last week where I did that, and we still had an hour or so out of planned 3 or 4 hours to spend together, so he shouldn't have had an issue. What he did next honestly broke my heart, and I almost started crying right there. "I don't think you love me as I do you, but that's fine. We'll raise our kid, grow old, and exist until we die. I already have a few hobbies that can make me happy. I can't make you responsible for all my happiness. That would be unfair." And he said that with the most deadpan expression ever, like we were talking about the weather or how our day went. I tried to make him understand that this hurt me, but it didn't seem to land at all. He just kept staring at me blank-faced, and I honestly felt terrified. Afterwards, we slept in the same bed after he put Lily to sleep, and we cuddled like normal, which was so jarring to me. I've put a lot of work into keeping us together, so to hear this from him has hurt me deeply. It's even worse because what he describes sounds exactly like his parents. They're 2 old, bitter people who stayed together to raise him and still stay together, for God knows why. I've never seen them be loving towards one another, and only once towards him. He was always very particular about that stuff and said he never wants to have something like that. A few years ago, he said that he was so glad we weren't like that and that he was so lucky to have someone who actually loves him and won't spontaneously stop because folded clothes wrong, which made me fall in love all over again to know how much I meant to him. And then there's all that stuff he said, and I honestly can't remember something like not talking to him or silence. But I remember how his mother used to forget things, like she'd do something wrong, get that wrong thing pointed out, and then forget it ever happened. One time she was saying something about how my kind of people are less likely to succeed in business and she'd become a housewife, which is weird because she's a lawyer, and he certainly hasn't said anything like that and is very proud of my passive income stuff. My husband called her out on it, stone-faced, and defended me. I didn't like that he said that I made more than him at the time because I was afraid his mom would say something, but she backed down after that. She forgot about that incident a day later. She couldn't recall that lunch or what we had said or anything. He didn't want to subject me to that, but I insisted since family is pretty important to me, so we went back a few times. This same thing has happened at least 2 times, the target switching to him. I'm proud of him for standing up to her, and she can't remember any of it. Eventually, I got a begrudging approval from her. His dad didn't care too much and was like, "Whatever makes you happy," from the start, which was nice. I'm crying my eyes out at a friend's house. I wanted to take Lily with me this morning, but she was in the middle of some class with Jack helping her do some activity the teacher gave them, so I just went on my own. I feel so heartbroken right now, and I don't know what could have happened to make him think this way. I've been having a great few years since he's been home the last 5 or so years and lightened the load on taking care of Lily. What happened? Does anybody have experience dealing with something like this? This is a complete breach of my trust, and I'm hurting so much from what he said. Any advice is helpful. I plan on returning at lunch and dinner for Lily's sake, but I'll try to talk to him after I've settled for a day. Edit, 4 hours in. I've canceled my plans for the week and told my friends nothing about why. One of my close friends, who is very friendly towards any husband, asks for him every time I go to their houses and spoils and plays with my daughter, then suggested it was my husband and said he was controlling and other things. I told her to stop, but she didn't, and nobody in the group did anything to stop her. Some even joined in. I've cut them all off. I can't believe this. Edit. Working on what to say tonight. Also working on replacing friend time with date nights. Somebody said I have to make him fall in love with me again. That's a goal. Edit. Went back home. Mostly finished the list of things to say. Found him repeatedly smashing his shoulders into a tree and actually denting it. Lily was watching and eating ice cream. She seemed tired but didn't want to go inside yet. I'm making dinner tonight. Update. This went better than expected. I wish I could say that there were tearful embraces and we spent a passionate night rekindling our marriage in record speed like a Lifetime movie. But no. Still, this is what I'd say is one of the best case scenarios. Firstly, I'll clarify from the other post on a few things I've noticed that people are getting blatantly wrong. Most seem to think that I am gone without him several nights a week. Around 2 to 3 times max. 4 was a unique case, and I misstated that. Don't initiate hooking up. I'm the only one initiating, and I get turned down half the time, which, as you can imagine, is doing wonderful things to my self-worth. I literally have to spend minutes convincing him to get anything more than 3 times a week. Cancel plans with him regularly for friends. I want to say no, but I'm beginning to doubt my own judgment. He's also invited to every single friend night. He just prefers not to come along. Affair. I'm not going to parties or clubs or anything like that. That's a hard boundary I set for him as well. The get-togethers and dinners are usually held a few houses down at my former friend's house, a 10-minute walk away. Now on to the update. Dinner was very good. Jack and Lily loved their meals, and afterwards I did what a commenter suggested and asked Lily, "Do you love mommy?" She answered yes. "Do you love daddy?" The yes was bigger. "You think daddy loves mommy?" Another adorable yes. "You think mommy loves daddy?" Silence. I felt like I had gotten slapped. I'm not sure if it showed on my face because Jack immediately came between us and rubbed her hair. He gave a very loud, boisterous, "Of course she does," picked her up and carried her to bed while tickling her. Pretty sure I was still reeling from that revelation, but I snapped out of it. Weirdly enough, he seemed annoyed when he got back, which is strange since he rarely ever shows something like that. Anyway, I remembered my points and pretty much unloaded everything in a half blueberry mess. I said that I was sorry for everything, that I got too caught up with old friends and I was blinded by all the activities and catching up and get-togethers that I didn't realize how much time I was cutting from our plans and our time and family. I was sorry for leaving this morning and trying to make this about me when he's trying his best for our daughter. I've been a bad partner, I know. I told him that I really appreciate that even if he has doubts, he's still willing to be true to me, and I'm proud of him for having the courage to communicate because it really needed to be said, and how I couldn't imagine how hard that was for him. That I wouldn't be associating with that group again because I realized what they really thought of him and that I was stupid not to have realized it earlier. That I know I hurt him and broke his trust, and I'm sorry he had to go through all of this, and that I never noticed because I was too caught up in my own life when I should have been caught up in our lives, and I'm sorry. That we should be a team, and that I don't only want to stay together for Lily, but I want him. If he had anything else to say or any doubts, to please say it, because I'll genuinely listen this time and I won't get defensive. Q hand-holding over table. That I do really care for him, and I was sorry that I haven't shown it recently, and to please just give me a chance. Just one chance, that's all I need. To give me the opportunity to show him that I love him. He just took a few breaths and said general issues that I pretty much initially dismissed. He also said that it would be a while before he trusts me enough to say anything that might send you running to your friends, which hurt considering the fact that I gave them up for him, but I mostly understood where he was coming from now that I wasn't feeling attacked by what he said. It still hurt when he added, "You'll change for a week or two, then change right back and forget it ever happened." I told him that was fine, and all he had to do was let me show him how much I care. All in all, it was great. All the planning paid off, and it felt like a weight was off my chest. I even did the small gestures of comfort stuff during it, like holding hands and meeting eyes. I could almost see a little change in his expression, mainly the eyes. He was blank-faced throughout the whole thing, but I could tell he was fighting to not break down since he rarely trembles. One of his tells is when his fingers start to spread out like some silly claw shape. That certainly didn't happen before. I knew there was hope. I've already booked a babysitter on his free day and have a reservation for a fancy restaurant that he likes. He agreed to go out with me with a small nod, and I honestly felt ecstatic. I immediately hugged him, and even though he was a bit stiff at first, he returned it. It's been a while since we felt together now that I think about it, and the feeling is different and bubbly. He went to sleep in the same bed and got excited when he held my neck and brought us closer and stared in my eyes while touching foreheads. then disappointed me when he just went to sleep. And to all those people who say he should leave me, seethe. It isn't happening. Am I the jerk for expecting my boyfriend to pay rent if he moves in with me? This is a doozy. I've been dating Josh for a year. I should say now that I, 24 female, don't ever want to be legally married, and Josh, 30 male, is divorced and doesn't want to remarry. We also live in a place where there is no common law marriage. Still, we want to take things a bit further, and we're talking about Josh and his 2 daughters moving in with me. I own a 3-bed, 2-bath house in a nice area. Josh rents a 2-bed, 1-bath apartment, and his lease is coming up. My mortgage is $1,000 a month, and Josh's rent is $1,400 a month. It was important to me that we would have everything figured out before making the change, so that there would be no surprises or disagreements about who pays what. I figured it would be unreasonable for Josh to expect to just live with me for free, especially since I'd be giving up one of my rooms so his daughters could have a room. I suggested that Josh pay $700 a month to me in rent, half of what he's currently paying. I would cover the cost of any home repairs, internet, garbage, etc. Then we would split utilities, even though there's 3 of them and 1 of me. I don't mind splitting since that would be about what I'm currently paying, I predict. And since I meal prep once a week, I would just get my own groceries and he could get theirs. When I laid everything out, Josh was very unhappy and said that since it's my house, he shouldn't have to pay rent and that we should split groceries. I told him he was welcome to buy his own house and I would move in with him and happily pay rent while renting out my own house. He was mad at me because he said he's not in a position where he can buy a house. We can't come to an agreement, so I suggested he just find another apartment. The owners aren't letting him renew, and we could revisit the topic in a year. He's not happy with that either because rent prices have skyrocketed here, and 2 bedrooms now go for around $1,800 a month, and he thinks he won't be able to find a place he can afford. I'm a bit frustrated because I feel like $700 a month is a really good deal compared to the likely $1,800 he will have to pay. Since we aren't going to get married or anything, I don't understand why he thinks I would be okay with him living for free with his 2 kids. I'm happy to have romance and companionship, but shared assets and finances are not something I want in life. I don't want to support a man. Am I the jerk for expecting my boyfriend to pay rent? Edit. I showed Josh this post and he thinks you are all wrong. So here's some input from him. Leslie makes $120,000 a year and I make $30,000 a year. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, supporting 2 kids with no help from my ex-wife. It's gotten so expensive here that at this rate, I'm not even going to be able to feed my kids soon without going to the food bank. No matter what, they're going to get fed. But it's not fair that she owns a house and can go on vacations or spend $400 a month getting her hair done when I can't even buy my kids name brand cereal. She shouldn't charge me to live with her because she should understand that I want to be able to spend whatever I can giving my kids the childhood that they deserve. Not for me, but for them. Just 2 hours later. Update. Thanks, Reddit. Owe you one, and I'm glad I posted here. After a very loud and angry argument with Josh, I broke up with him. Despite pretty much everyone telling him he was wrong, Josh insisted that I should basically support the 3 of them because it's what would be best for his kids. He doesn't seem to understand that they aren't my kids, and no one is going to want to bankroll the 3 of them, at least no one with a brain. The point is, I'm young, good looking, I own a house. I can do better than a broke single dad who has no education and a crappy job who thinks it's okay to mooch off me and scream in my face when I tell him no. Hope your next girlfriend is stupid enough to put up with you, Josh. No wonder your ex-wife left you. Am I the jerk for calling my fiancé selfish for wanting to announce her pregnancy at her cousin's wedding? My fiancé, who's 29, and I, 31 male, just found out that we're pregnant. My fiancé mentioned that she wanted to wait to announce it at her cousin's wedding, which will be taking place on Sunday. Her cousin and her husband have been struggling getting pregnant even with IVF. Recently, they got some news that their insurance has stopped funding IVF, so when my fiancé brought it up to me, I told her it's not at all a good idea. This just seems so wrong, especially it being at their wedding. I asked if she was going to at least ask her cousin for permission, and she said no, because she wanted it to be a surprise for everyone. I told her it's not the time nor the place for it, and that it would take the spotlight off the couple. In our family, there hasn't been a baby for 3 years, so we'd be the first in that time. Fiancé feels that's the perfect time because it's such a joy, and it's not like she can keep it away forever, and their problem shouldn't keep her from telling something so positive. So it's on them if they turn it negative. I told her that's not the point. She knows what they've been through, and she's being selfish if she actually goes through with it. She cried and claimed I wasn't being supportive of her, and I shouldn't be calling my pregnant fiancé selfish. She doesn't want me to come with her to the wedding anymore, feeling as if I would ruin the mood. She hasn't been talking to me either. Edit. So about my fiancé and her cousin's relationship. My fiancé always saw competition in her cousin because her cousin would be better at some things than her. Grades, dancing, cosmetics, etc. since they were kids, and she hates that. Last year, they had an argument about it because fiancé felt her cousin bragged too much, whereas my fiancé also mentioned there was one thing her cousin wasn't good at, but never said what it was. So in shorter terms, the relationship is in between good and bad, but her cousin wanted to invite her to the wedding. I'm guessing to rekindle that. Update. Sorry for the long wait. I've been going through some things. Me and my fiancé breaking up, work, the passing of my grandfather, etc. So I didn't expect to get a bunch of replies on my post, but a lot of them were helpful. My ex was determined to go to the wedding despite my protests and even planned out how she was going to be refusing alcohol when offered. I did tell my ex's parents about what she was planning on doing. I didn't want to tell the groom or the bride because I wouldn't know how to put it in words that wouldn't make the whole situation less awful. Ex's parents did end up telling the bride's parents, and they told the bride. The bride was so upset that she, unfortunately, called off the wedding. Everyone wanted her to continue it and invite my ex for a couple of plans guests thought of. Example, when my ex announced it, everyone would just stay nonchalant and not give her the excited reaction she was hoping for, and the classic just don't invite her plan. The bride just understandably wanted to be left alone, and she texted my fiancé a very long paragraph telling her what a horrible person she was. She just decided not to do the wedding anymore, and her fiancé was very heartbroken. But all in all, they were both very grateful to me. My ex instantly knew that I was the cause of all of this, and she was furious with me, even more because I posted about it here, but also said a pretty sick thing about how she still pretty much won anyways. I just decided to break up with her myself after that. Some of her family members are kind of upset with me, as they believed I just caused a bunch of drama. Now I'm currently in the works of talking to an attorney, as my ex told me I will not be seeing the baby after they're born. So, on top of all of the grief, working, breakup, being called a mess starter by some of her family, and still feeling like crap, because either way, the bride and groom were heartbroken. It's just putting a bunch of anxiety and stress on me. Am I the jerk for giving back everything my family bought for my son? My wife and I welcomed our son into the world early this month. Prior to his birth, we had been given a lot of very nice clothes and toys by my parents for him. My mother-in-law also made some pretty incredible clothes and blankets. My wife, her siblings, and their mom lived in poverty for a large part of her life. Their dad abandoned the family and left my wife's mom with a large pile of debt that weighed on them. So their life wasn't easy. My mother-in-law often made her kids clothes versus buying them because it was cheaper for her to do so. She worked in a store that had a lot of fabrics that they were allowed to take the excess of. She's talented and always put an effort into making sure the clothes looked good enough so that the kids wouldn't be bullied. Those clothes are something my wife treasures. She remembers how much love and effort went into them. She also appreciates that her mom tried to make them work enough to blend in at school, that it saved them years of potential bullying. All these years later, and mother-in-law is still dealing with the debt. She does not have a lot, so she made some amazing clothes and blankets for our son. One of the outfits was even his take-home outfit. But then a couple of days after our son was born, she comes over with a bag of clothes she bought, saying she wanted him to have more. My wife and I were shocked. I could see she was upset and looked almost guilty, so when my wife went to nap, I asked her what was going on. At first, she said nothing and she just wanted her grandson to have more, but then she apologized for embarrassing us. I asked her what she meant. She told me my parents had talked to her after the baby shower and told her that she had left all of the grandparent spoiling to them, that she should understand if we never put our son in any of the clothes because really, they look like the kind of homemade clothes from 70 years ago when people were left with no choice. They accused her of not caring enough. I told her I was so sorry that they had said that. I assured her I had never said anything like that to them, that my parents had no idea what it was like to have nothing and were being judgmental jerks. I even convinced her to take back the clothes she bought and return them to the store. I then gathered up everything my parents gave us and went to their house. My parents didn't even try to deny it when I confronted them. All they did is look down at the effort she put into them. They said we couldn't seriously be okay with those being the only gifts. I said we were, and as far as I was concerned, they were the only truly generous gift he got, and I told them it was their gifts I was embarrassed of. I gave them the stuff back and told them we were no longer accepting their gifts after what they did. They are furious, saying I reacted way too harshly and saying it's a jerk move to return gifts. I'm furious with them too. Am I the jerk? We talk all the time here about what you really have is a spouse problem. This is textbook how to not be a problem spouse. You stood up to your side of the family in defense of your partner and her side of the family. No one had to argue for you to do it, and you didn't angst over how unfair it is to harm your relationship with your parents just because they were jerks. No, you saw the harm done and took accountability for rectifying it and ensuring it won't happen again. Bravo! Congratulations on your bundle of joy, and congratulations to your wife on choosing the right person to spend her life with. Your folks are jerks, but you're not the jerk. Your mother-in-law sounds awesome. I would be so honored to get baby clothes made by a grandparent's own hand. I can't believe she was made to feel badly about such a precious and thoughtful gift. Those are heirlooms. One day you'll be gray and showing off those clothes to your adult kids and sharing stories about what a big-hearted lady your mother-in-law was. How much she loved her kids and grandkids and what a strong person she was. Buy a new one or go home. I used to work at Sonic as a car hop. I usually worked 4 to 5 to close. One day I was cleaning up all the drinks the day shift left around and I found a can of Monster. I grabbed it and walked around and asked everyone who was working. The manager, Robert, like normal, was talking to his girlfriend on the phone. When I asked if it was his, he looked right at me, shook his head, and turned away without saying anything. After I finished asking everybody else, I dumped it out and threw it away. 30 to 45 minutes later, he comes up front and went to throw away his trash and sees it in the trash. He was livid, started screaming, grabbed it out of the trash, and started shoving it in people's face, asking if they threw it away. I told him they didn't. I did. He cornered me against the wall and screamed in my face that I was going to leave and go buy him a new one. 2 things. The Monster was probably half full, if that, and I hate being yelled at. And I had asked him if it was his. We got into this huge fight about it, him demanding I replace it, me telling him to buzz off. This went on for 2 hours. It was slow because it was winter, so he sent everybody else home. He was cooking. Finally, he told me I was either going to go buy a new one or I was going to go home. It was 7 at this point. We closed at midnight. I grabbed my stuff and went and clocked out. He said if I didn't go get him a new drink, I was fired. I said okay, see you never. Not even 5 minutes after I left, the general manager, Jeremy, called me asking why I left, so I told him what had happened. He said the other manager can't fire me, as only the GM can, and asked me to go back and finish the shift. I told him that I couldn't do that with Robert yelling in my face like that I'd go back tomorrow. So Robert was done for the rest of the night. Nobody else, not even Jeremy, would come in. He had to cook and run orders for 5 hours by himself. Really upset a lot of customers. And when I went in the next day, he asked why I was back since he fired me, and it was a joy to tell him that he couldn't do that. He held a grudge for 3 whole months. My daughter is demanding that I pay her student loans for her. I'm currently being given the cold shoulder by both my youngest daughter and my wife over this, so I thought I'd get an outside opinion. Both of my 2 daughters graduated from similarly costing universities. I had a school fund set up for both of them, but it didn't cover everything. They both, after graduating, had about $60,000 in student loan debt. They also both were lucky to find jobs in their fields a few months after graduating with similar salaries, about $55,000 a year. However, they took vastly different approaches to their debt. My eldest, for the last 3 years, has lived extremely frugally, and outside of basic needs and bills, all her extra money goes into paying her debt off. My youngest, on the other hand, asked if she could live at home until she gets her loans paid off, but she still only pays the minimum required to send every month and spends the rest of the money on herself. Now the issue started a few days ago. My eldest called me, all excited because her loan debt was down to $500 and she would be able to finally pay it off when she gets her next paycheck. We spoke for a bit more, and after the call ended, I decided to surprise her by sending her $1,000 to pay off the rest of her debt, and so she could finally have some money to do something for herself for once. When I was talking to my wife and youngest daughter over dinner about how impressed I was that she paid it off so fast, my youngest started yelling about how I've never given her money towards her loans. I explained that while I'm not directly paying them, I'm still helping her by letting her live at home rent-free, and she could be closer to paying it off if she spent less on things she doesn't need. After screaming and crying to me a bit more, she stormed off and is staying at her boyfriend's currently. My wife thinks that I should promise to give her some money each month to help her pay off her loan faster so we can keep the peace at home, but I don't think I should reward her for nothing. Not the jerk. Technically, by allowing her to live at home with you this whole time, you've probably paid more towards your youngest loans than your eldest anyway, when you take into account extra groceries, power, and water. You're the jerk. If you have the funds to help your daughter pay off her debt, but you're simply refusing to do it out of selfishness and greed, then you really need to think about what's important to you in life. I will never understand parents who have the money to pay for their kids' college, but simply refuse to do so. This is the kind of stuff that will make them go no contact with you. Yowza! And people wonder why Reddit boy and I don't have any kids. My sister complains about her life, so I gave her a piece of my mind. To start this off, I'm going to give you some context as to why she did and why I didn't pity her. I, 28 female, have a sister Caitlin who is 1 year older than me. Growing up, we were dirt poor. Our family nailed almost every single southern hillbilly idea on the head. We both did decently, but neither of us had ever considered college. Caitlin graduated high school first and got a full-time job immediately. She began to help with bills, but at some point began thinking about maybe going to school. I was having the same thoughts a year later when I graduated. Well, what we hadn't known was that when our great-grandma passed, she left my dad all that she had, which came up to a sum of a couple $1,000s that they decided to save for us. And because Kate began talking about maybe going to school, Mom began to save her bill money and add it to the sum of the money. Unfortunately, it still wasn't a lot, so our parents sat us down and explained that they had money for only one of us to go to school, and that they would have to think about who to give it to. I was prepared to fight for this chance because I realized that was my chance to better myself. I was ready to do whatever it took, but I didn't end up needing to because Kate gave up. I guess Caitlin realized she wouldn't be picked because I had better grades and was more well-liked, because Mom told me later that day that she had backed down and said to give it to me. So fast forward, I got my BSN and work as a travel nurse. I do very well for myself and live 2 hours away from my hometown. I went to visit my sister because she's pregnant with my nephew, and I missed her and brought some gifts. We had lunch and we were just chatting about what we were up to when she began to complain and whine that she was tired and asked if I didn't mind if she vented. Before I could answer, she started talking about how she was tired all the time from her shifts at work and then having to come home to her kids and her husband. It sounded a lot like she was regretting her life, and after about 20 minutes, it was starting to get on my nerves. She would not stop or change topic. Finally, I lost it and told her that I wasn't here to listen to her complain and that she really shouldn't complain about the life she chose. I told Caitlin that if she didn't want to have to get married and have a low-paying job, and if she wanted to better herself, she should have fought harder to go to college instead of giving up before she even tried. It ended in her crying, which I felt horrible about, and then she went home without saying anything else. I tried apologizing for how I phrased it, but not for anything I actually said because it was true, but she won't accept it. Our parents have been giving me the cold shoulder, and I feel lost because they won't listen to my side of what I said. Am I the jerk here? Am I the jerk for yelling at my sister after she called my partner a gold digger? So I, 30 male, come from a well-off family, but my dad always taught me to work hard and to have class. When I was 14, I started working at my dad's company part-time to earn my allowance, and when I turned 16, I became a real part-time employee. My dad decided to retire when I was 29 and handed the business to me. Back in my second year of uni, I met Kim, who was 20 at the time, but 29 now. We were in the same course and ended up in the same group for a group project near the beginning of the year. We had a similar sense of humor and clicked as friends instantly. One day he mentioned he loves to cook, and I told him we should cook together because I love to cook too. And that weekend we went to his place, bought some ingredients and cooked together. Then this became us going shopping for ingredients after classes on Friday. I'd stay at his place the night and we would cook on the weekend, and this became our weekly routine. Back then, I just told others that we were friends, but with hindsight, that is definitely when I started to fall for him. I finally asked him out a few months later and he said yes. We lived in the same house with 2 other friends in our 3rd year, and I asked him to move in with me after we graduated. From the beginning, I told Kim I would not care if he didn't work, but he insisted he wanted to contribute financially. But after about a year, I had to make him stop due to differences in our incomes. He was working himself half to death and was getting ill trying to contribute enough. I sat him down and told him that whatever money he made didn't matter, that if he wanted to work, I wanted him to be happy. He cut back his hours, then moved to part-time, then decided to quit and work on his own projects, but he insisted I let him take on some of the housework. Now on to the issue. My sister, 32 female, she and her partner, 31 male, both work, and he also makes significantly less than her. And in private to me, She's made it known that she resents being the breadwinner. She sees all her male colleagues spoil and treat their wives and wishes her partner would do the same. He does, but just not to the same level due to the fact that he makes basically half as much as they do. Recently, I was talking to her about what I was going to get Kim for his birthday next month. She kept telling me ideas were too much and that I should get something cheaper since he doesn't contribute. I got a bit annoyed because I've told her about Kim's insecurities of not making enough money. I told her he contributes more than enough. She then called him a glorified gold digger, and I yelled at her, telling her to shut up and to not talk about Kim that way. After calming down, I do feel bad now. I know that she feels bad about her own financial position, but I don't think it's fair that she takes that out on Kim or myself, even if Kim wasn't physically there. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It sounds like your sister is projecting her frustrations and insecurities onto you and Kim. If your relationship with Kim works for you and he, your sister needs to butt out. Am I the jerk for kicking out my nephew since he thought it was his house? Okay, so I'm female, 25, and my nephew is 20. This all happened a few weeks ago, but here's the backstory. Me and my nephew grew up together, and I took care of him for most of my childhood and teen years. Even though we're 5 years apart, I still had to take care of him, and I really never minded. He's family, and I care for him a lot, but growing up, he would steal my stuff and not give it back, or give it back ruined or damaged. Instead of getting in trouble, it was always me getting in trouble since I was the oldest. Since he had a rough childhood, I had to let him do whatever he wanted. I honestly did not like that because I raised him the best I could being a teenager, and I didn't have a choice. I had to clean, I had to cook for him, and it made me upset. But that's in the past. Currently, I have an apartment and I needed help paying rent, and my nephew offered to live with me and pay some rent. His college is a 10-minute drive away from there, and where we used to live, it's like a 40-minute drive, so he moved in with me. At first, he was paying it, and then slowly he stopped paying it. Obviously, I let him know that he does have to pay rent, and that if he could pay me soon, and he never did. He just said that since I'm his aunt and I'm older, I have to pay for everything for him, which really upset me. I know that I didn't raise him to be like that. I found out that he was doing certain things that he wasn't supposed to be doing. I also found out he's been stealing money from my room. He doesn't give me money for anything. He just goes to school and stays in my apartment rent-free, and I can't support the both of us. I've told his mom about it and my mom, and all that they told me was that I should support him and give him money since I'm his aunt. I have money, but I can barely afford my own rent, and they want me to give him money just so he can go spend it? No way. I told him that he has to get a job or he can't live with me. Then he threatened to kick me out of my own apartment, so I snapped and I kicked him out. I threw his clothes out and I told him not to come back. Most of my family doesn't want to talk to me right now. They're mad at me, and my cousins are the only ones talking to me. The rest of the family is not. Am I the jerk? Update. I want to say thank you to everyone for being brutally honest with me, and I want to clear a few things up. I'm the youngest of my siblings, and yes, I get it that maybe it wasn't the best idea to let him live with me, but I raised him, and I really just couldn't leave him like that, and since he said he would pay, I thought it would be okay, but obviously it wasn't. But I've cut them out, and I've left his stuff in the lobby, and nobody wants to take him. But I'm done with him. Not the jerk. You're his aunt, not his parents nor his guardian. You're a young adult learning to navigate life yourself, and this is not your burden to bear. Your family is literally teaching your nephew to mooch off of others and to be entitled. You shouldn't have been in that position to raise him to start with.